2025 meeting of the Transportation Commission to order. Anita, if you could please read the instructions.
Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in the original email. Members, if you're able, please activate your video for purposes of quorum and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you are speaking. All panelists can mute and unmute themselves, but please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you have entered in Zoom must match the name you have in the registration. You will remain muted until called upon. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the committee, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Thanks. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anita. Aiden, if you could call the roll, please.
Sure thing. So Sean O'Brien.
Present.
Dina Nina Martinez Rutherford.
Don't see her.
She does have she had mentioned she might have to leave at 6:30-ish for a meet and greet that she has.
Okay.
But all right. So next is Ann Kovich,
Here.
Robbie Weber,
Here.
Chris McCahill,
Here.
Bill Bremer,
Bill's here. Can you hear
who
us,
is
Bill?
here?
We can't hear you, Bill.
Let me go get my microphone.
Oh, there we just heard you there.
Okay.
Great.
Harold Kleems,
Here.
Kaylee Jameson,
Here.
and Lynn Olson.
Present.
So then William Okovich, Barbara Harrington McKinney, Denise Jess, and Pepe Barros are all excused tonight.
Okay, so we had a couple more people join, so we have 8 at this point. So just a reminder that 6 is quorum. So if people need to leave, if you could just give us a heads up so we can just double check that we have quorum.
I am going to be able to be here, but I have to go to a public meeting for an alcohol license review. That's going to be kind of dueling. I just need to be present at that meeting. So I might end up turning my camera off, but I will be like here listening, just so you're not seeing the underside of my chin at all times.
Okay. So you're doing the multitasking thing, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely multitasking.
Okay, thanks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. So we have 8 people. So 5 votes are needed to pass a motion this evening. And Kaylee and Lynn, since we have so many people gone, you're both able to make motions and vote this evening. Okay, thanks everybody. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting? So is anybody willing to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So there's a motion by Lynn and a second by Chris. Any discussion?
I'm going to abstain, Ann, because I wasn't here.
Okay, so Bill wants to abstain. Okay, any other comments or abstentions? Okay, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote with 1 abstention. Does anybody wishes to vote no or add to the abstentions? Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you. And I know we have a couple of written comments under item number 1. Did we have anybody registered to speak under item 1?
We do not under item 1.
Okay. Do we have any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay, seeing no hands. Okay, we have one item on the consent agenda this evening, and that's because it was here before us in the past, and it's just now making its way through the Common Council. So do we have anybody registered to speak on item 2, Aiden?
We do not. Nope.
No? Okay. Does anybody wish to have that item separated from the consent agenda? Anybody wish to discuss it? Okay, anybody willing to make a motion to pass the consent agenda? Bill?
I'll make a motion to approve item number 2, consent.
Okay, there's a motion. Alder O'Brien?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I'm assuming no discussion since nobody indicated they wish to discuss it. I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no, abstain, etc. So please raise your hand. Phil, your hand is up. I'm assuming that's from your motion. I'm just going to lower it. Okay. Anybody have any? Okay. I'm going to assume unanimous consent vote then on item number 2. Okay, so next on the agenda is item 3 on Midvale Boulevard. So I believe we have people registered to speak this evening. Is that correct, Aiden?
That is correct. We have several.
Okay. So what we will do is we will hear from staff with the presentation, and then we'll hear from the public so we can have all of the input from staff and the public. And then we'll go to comments and questions from Transportation Commission members and other alders who are attending as well. So Tom, why don't you go ahead?
All right. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, Tom Moore with Traffic Engineering. So I'll give a presentation on Midvale, some of the background and how we got here and where we're at. So we're looking at the section between Mineral Point Road and University Avenue. This was originally just a Safe Streets project, but engineering also needs to do some resurfacing. So it kind of evolved more into the resurfacing project and looking at how we utilize the pavement and lanes. So this map is the low stress bike finder map. It shows Midvale as high stress. There's existing parking and 2 travel lanes in each direction. This goes back to 2023. We had a brief discussion at TC in 2023 about this in relation to Safe Streets Madison. We then had a public information meeting with residents in May. It was kind of lower attendance. We heard, I should say, at that public meeting, we presented a proposal for buffered bike lanes in each direction along this entire length, removing the on-street parking. We kind of had a mixed response at that meeting, but it wasn't really anything notable. We then had another PIM. I'm sorry. The May PIM was just about the background of the street and giving some collecting feedback from the residents. Then in October, we came with our buffered bike lane proposal. We then had a third PIM in January of this year with our proposal again. That included an adjustment to allow some parking on one portion of it, but the response was overall very negative. A big attendance. We had over 100 people attend, and it was just strongly negative response. So we left that meeting going back to look at different options, and that's where we're at right now. So just some other background that we shared at the public meetings and that we would refresh here is that we have a complete green streets guide for the city of Madison that we've adopted. Within that, there's a modal hierarchy that places parking at the bottom, pedestrians at the top, bikes kind of in the middle. Midvale would be classified as a boulevard, although it's not. I wouldn't say it 100% aligns with the boulevard classification because of the single family residential, many driveways. But it's pretty close to that. So that's the classification. Here are the different preferences for boulevards. See sidewalks, possibly a shared use path on one or both sides. Typically 2 travel lanes in each direction and medians. Protected bike lanes would be preferred. Median width to allow trees, which is what we have right now. So it's pretty close to that right now, except for the bike. There is no dedicated bike facilities right now. We have a draft all ages and abilities bike network, but Midvale is not identified for that network. But this is just an initial draft. We collected parking data on a few different days. So here's a weekday in May. You can see from these numbers that there's higher utilization of parking on the northbound side, mostly north of Regent, but then higher. There's multi-unit apartments right here where we've got the higher use of the on-street parking. Very low utilization of parking to the south. So this is May 2023. Here is a Tuesday in October 2023. Kind of similar results. Very low utilization except for that one area. Here's a Saturday, kind of the same thing. Again, a Tuesday in November of last year. So the design that we showed was a buffered bike lane. So it'd be a 7-foot bike lane with a 3-foot buffer, narrow up the travel lanes a little bit, but maintain the 2 travel lanes, remove the on-street parking. And the reason for this is that Midvale, the street width is just, I think it's 3 feet too narrow to get a bike lane adjacent to a parking lane. So south of Mineral Point Road, we have that width and that's how it's marked out. But north of Mineral Point Road, along this section, it's a little bit too narrow. So here's a plan view of that proposal that we showed at the public information meeting. Buffered bike lanes, north is to the right. And then where the green box is, that is where we would cut into the median to get the extra width to allow us to have the bike lane next to the parking lane. Cutting into the median here, we wouldn't have to remove any trees. There's just kind of no trees along this area. More of the trees are to the south. So wanted to point that out. This is just showing a little bit zoomed in view of that, how that would work. We could provide a little bit of a buffer, mark it out next to the parking lane. So yeah, again, this took this proposal to the January meeting. Very long meeting, very negative overall response. Few people spoke in favor of it. So that's when we went back and looked at different options. So some of the options that we looked at but we dismissed are parking cutouts in the existing terrace. We could do that, but there's only a few locations where we could do that without disturbing trees and it's also kind of difficult to make it work in the existing terrace. We could, but we'd kind of be choosing which areas would get parking and which wouldn't, and it just difficult to do along that entire stretch of Midvale. Another option was peak hour parking restrictions, like what we used to have on Doty Street during the PM peak, where kind of like a floating or moving bike lane, where during the midday it would look like this, where it would be one lane with a bike lane and then a parking lane. And then during the peak hour, we would remove parking and have the bike lane shift over to the curb lane. But what we found in our one example of this that we previously had on Doty Street was that it was confusing. We had overhead electronic sign that changed throughout the day to try to reinforce where the bike lane was, but overall it was confusing, even with the high utilization of parking. So out on Midvale, very low parking use, especially to the south. So I think it would be difficult to get the message across to the public, both to people parking and to drivers, that it's changing throughout the day. We looked at permanent lane reductions. We looked at hourly volumes in both directions to see what we could do if it was possible to permanently reduce a lane. Overall, it would be difficult. It may be possible under existing volumes, but volumes are increasing kind of to where they were previously. We have data going back to 2013, and it's part of the national highway system. So it's one of the few non-state highways that is on that national highway system. So that also complicates things with doing a permanent reduction. But it is something we looked at. So then we came up with 3 different options and had put this into an online survey. This survey went live end of July, and it was available for 5 weeks. It just closed a week ago. So the first option was that initial proposal of the buffered bike lane, where we kept the parking on the east side. Again, this is what I showed previously. So this is what we included in the survey. We included the pros and cons and kind of explained the different options to people. Option 2 was kind of partly using Midvale, but just the southern portion. So we would have to remove parking along that southern portion from Mineral Point Road to Bagley, and then creating a bike boulevard connection up to using Meadow Lane over to Blackhawk, and then using the new crossing that we are installing right now at the Blackhawk University Avenue intersection. So there's going to be an RRFB there to help pedestrians cross University Avenue. But parking would remain on the rest of Midvale, and parking would remain on the other streets, only removed on Midvale to the south. So here's that new crossing that's going to be finished up this month. The third option was to look at alternative north-south routes for bikes from Midvale, and instead use Owen Drive and Seagull Road, and then especially focus on improving the crossings of Mineral Point Road, because that's the that's kind of the dividing line that makes these routes difficult right now. So at Seagull Road, we could cut into the median at the intersection, provide some protection for the bike lanes at the intersection. This is feedback that we've heard from different users that, especially right turning vehicles, kind of use that bike lane, and it gets crowded there. So we could provide some protection. And then over at Owen Drive, we could get bikes off the street up to the crosswalks where they could use the existing rapid flashing beacon on the east leg and install buttons on the west leg to provide that space. Install a new concrete island for a little bit of a refuge, just to make this north-south route easier. With all the options, we provided that we can improve the pedestrian crossings regardless of what's chosen. We plan to add RRFBs at both Hillcrest and further north at the Hilldale Mall driveway. And then we can upgrade the existing signals. Those are really old signals, really old infrastructure where we're really limited as to what we can do. So we could upgrade those and change them to audible pedestrian signals, and look at upgrading the pedestrian crossing, just the curb ramps, median noses, and bump outs on either side of Midvale. So again, option 1 is the bike lanes all along Midvale. Option 2 is the Meadow bike route. And option 3 is Seago Owen Drive. So the results of the survey, we'll go through each option. For option 1, so we have, do you support it? Do you not support it? Do you not prefer it, but it's acceptable, and no opinion? So we've got this summarized here. And then in the bottom right, I just added up the support plus acceptable percentage. So for this one, it's 53%. Option 1 had the most do not support at 44%. So option 2, support and accept plus acceptable is 65%, with 32% not supporting. And option 3 is support plus acceptable is 74%, with 24% not supporting. So the last question was, what is your top choice? And option 3 won that with about 54%. But a huge response in the survey, over 2,000 responses, which is way beyond anything we've seen from previous surveys. And then we did map these. The maps just showing how different areas of the city responded. So just the Midvale residents, this is how they responded, with 56% going for option 3 as their top choice, 23% option 1, and 18% option 2. So then just kind of the Sunset Village neighborhood plus Midvale residents, this is how they responded. So just a little bit less support for option 3, a little bit more support for the other options. These are all city responses, excluding the people directly on Midvale or in the neighborhood. So still pretty similar. So just kind of wanted to show that there's not a huge variation of how people voted or responded based on where they live. So this is all citywide responses, 48% choosing the option 3. So we included all the written comments as attachments to the agenda, so you can go through, read each comment. So option 1 had 369 comments. Total of 654 people chose option 1, and we just provided some different themes and examples that people included here. But yeah, I can let you read through those. But option 3, definitely the most responses and comments. There was a lot of, not liking what we did on Whitney Way, and there desire to preserve the parking. There were some comments about Seago Road and our parking protected and curb protected bike lanes there. Some negative response to that shown in these comments. But then a lot of the no, if they didn't select anything, a lot of people just said, you know, keep it the same. Don't do anything. We'll like it the way it is. So that was all I wanted to present. Yeah, big thing was just looking at the survey results. Pretty interesting. A lot of responses. So, yeah, I can take questions after we hear from the public.
That sounds
amount of underground utilities that will be due for a pretty major reconstruct. Most notably the storm sewer. But right now that utility cannot afford the full reconstruct to do the work that would be required. So what we're trying to kind of do here is just buy us about 10 to 12 years with a simple service, do no underground utilities at all. So that's why you're seeing some more limited options that we're providing with keeping the curbs in most cases, except for a small portion of option one. So just wanted to point that out. I think, in somewhere between 10 and 15 years, we'd probably do a reconstruct, and then we'd have a lot more options to, have a path or, all kinds of different configurations. So we just wanted to point that out for folks. Thanks.
thanks. That's very helpful, Chris. Okay, Aiden, who do we have?
So first we have Linda Kruger of Midvale Boulevard, opposes and wishes to speak.
Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Great. So yeah, my name's Linda Krieger. My husband and I have lived on Midvale for about 14 years, and we have 2 young kids. So I'm speaking tonight to express strong opposition to option 1, which is the bike lane addition and parking removal on Midvale. We care deeply about safety, accessibility, supporting all modes of transportation, but option 1 just doesn't seem to align with the project goals, which is to improve safety for all users. Midvale's a busy road. It's an emergency route. It has high traffic volumes, lots of speeding. Pushing cyclists into this environment just doesn't seem to improve safety. It seems to increase risks for drivers and bikers. And as the city said in their own documentation, it's not going to be an all ages and all abilities bike lane. So it's not going to be a bike lane that my 5-year-old son can use. It's only going to accommodate advanced bikers. I wanted to quickly address the parking study that they showed. I know they've shown that at previous PIMs too. I do agree that there tends to be low parking utilization towards the middle of the day, but I just want to point out that that's really not representative of nights, weekends, and holidays when residents tend to have visitors at their house. So I also feel option 1 doesn't consider the parking needs for Midvale residents. Parking is really important to us and our neighbors. Many of the homes have small driveways or no garages. We depend on parking for lots of short-term uses that wouldn't show up in the parking study, like hosting family and friends for summer cookouts, hosting our elderly parents for kids' birthday parties, having service people at our homes when a water heater breaks or a sump pump needs servicing, and lots of other reasons. So, removing parking really is going to have a real day-to-day impact on family like ours, and I also feel it's going to negatively affect our home values. So I'm not against biking. I'm a big biker myself. I bike regularly with both of my kids. I support safe options for cyclists. I just really, truly don't believe that Midvale Boulevard is the right location for a bike lane. So for this reason, I fully support option 3, which is the Seago Road and Owen Drive Bike Boulevard option. To me, it's a much more balanced and thoughtful solution that is really safe for cyclists and still preserves the critical parking for residents. So to me, it's the fair compromise that works for everyone. So I guess on behalf of me and my family and our neighbors and guests, I'd urge you to support either options 2 or 3 with a preference toward option 3 as the preferred alternative. So thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much for coming. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, again, thanks for coming. Who do we have next, Aiden?
So next we have Nicholas Davies of Richard Street, neither supports nor opposes, and wishes to speak.
Hi, good evening. For me, the bottom line is options that don't make biking on Midvale safer won't make biking on Midvale safer. If the city does something to improve other routes elsewhere in the city, that's nice. But as it pertains to the safety issues on Midvale, these other options are just dividing the discussion and distracting from the core issue. It's whataboutism. You know, we could do all these other things, and far from putting the issue to rest, people's lives would still be at risk while biking on Midvale, and we'd still have to have this conversation until something actually gets done. Cyclists deserve the convenient direct route just as much as drivers do, even more so, in fact, because distance matters much more in terms of time and effort. So if anyone should be exiled from Midvale, it should be drivers. But even if the alternative routes were equivalent, which they are not, these options would be directing cyclists away from signalized intersections to non-signalized ones. When you're crossing multiple lanes of traffic at a non-signalized intersection, sure, it's better to have the RRFB than not, but it's even better to avoid that situation altogether. The safety record of these multi-lane RRFBs shows this, like the one at the Southwest Path in West Wash prior to the lane reduction there, and directing people to this type of intersection will be a setback for Vision Zero. I don't think Safe Streets funding should go to a project that's going to create new safety issues while leaving the original safety issues unaddressed. Note that I'm not here to dictate what the bike facility needs to look like. I'm not saying that parking needs to be removed. That's a false dichotomy, and it absolves the speeding commuter traffic of creating the safety issues. For example, earlier iterations included an option for a lane reduction to preserve parking and a parking protected bike lane. And in terms of the city's adopted modal hierarchy, that's the trade-off we should be discussing tonight. A lane reduction would do a lot to reduce speeding, which in turn would greatly improve safety outcomes in the event of a crash. Midvale, in its current configuration, has already claimed a life. It shouldn't take another fatality to actually get some improvements, and we shouldn't pass up this opportunity to make those improvements. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, seeing no hands, thanks for coming. Who do we have next, Aiden?
Next we have Juan Colas of South Midvale Boulevard, opposes and wishes to speak.
Hi. Hi, I'm Juan Colas. I live on South Midvale, just south of Regent Street, a couple houses south. Before I retired, I was a lifelong bicycle commuter, and for many of those years, a year-round bicycle commuter, both from the far west side where we used to live and from Midvale where we moved just 7 years ago. And I still ride recreationally, and of necessity, I ride on Midvale. And I'm opposed to option 1, to removing the parking and replacing it with a bike lane, both because I don't feel that it is needed, and because I think it places an unfair burden on residents who rely on parking. I don't think it's needed because even now with the light use of parking, on any given day, at any given time, on average, more than 95% of the curb lane between Mineral Point Road and Regent Street is available unimpeded for bicycles because there's such light parking usage. And that was demonstrated, I think, in Mr. Davies's video that he submitted, which I thank him for, because he's a better videographer than I am. But it clearly showed that there was very little obstruction from parking. One of the vehicles in that video that was parked was an MG&E service truck. Another one, I think, was a school bus dropping off or picking up with its flashers on. And the video also showed ample, lengthy gaps in traffic to allow a safe deviation into the traffic lane, which cyclists have a right to do when the curb lane is obstructed or unsafe. There's also, Mr. Davies referred to a fatality. I'm not sure if that's a bicycle car fatality or not. I know there has been other fatalities on Midvale not involving bicycles. From the information I have, in the 77 years that Midvale's been a street with houses, there have not been any bicycle car collisions, injuries, or fatalities. So even if we install a bike lane on Midvale, there's not going to be a reduction from zero. It'll be a project that'll result in zero reductions in fatalities, zero reductions in injuries, zero reductions in collisions. So it's really, there's not a strong safety basis for it. There may be an argument from the point of view of rider comfort, but that's a different issue. As the map showed, the Midvale is surrounded by low stress routes. Finally, the majority of riders for whom an improved Midvale might be an attractive option will still have, do now have, and will still have better, more direct, more efficient options for travel to their destinations from almost any point of origin, except those of us who live immediately in the neighborhood. And I detailed that more in my written remarks than I will go into here. The burden on residents, the light parking has been used as an argument for the bike lane, saying that residents don't really use the parking that much.
That's your time, sir. Thank you very much for coming. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious because you said you live on Midvale near Regent, and you talk about being a bike commuter and feeling comfortable on Midvale. You mentioned parking from Regent to Mineral Point, but if you were to go from your house to, say, Walgreens or the credit union on the other side of University Avenue, what route would you take? Because there's significantly more parking between Regent and University Avenue, and there's not a good crossing of University Avenue except on Midvale.
You're right that there is more parking there. And in fact, when I was still working, I would sometimes take that commute to pick up the Lakeshore Path to go down to the square through State Street and so on. But yes, I would take from my house, because I'm right on Midvale, I just take Midvale and I take over the traffic lane when I need to, including at that intersection when I'm going straight across through. I try to make sure I'm in a highly visible spot for the drivers that might be behind me, which I have always felt is the greatest contribution I can make to my own safety is to be assertive about my right to use the roadway, even if it makes some drivers unhappy, as long as I'm complying with traffic signals, stop signs, and signals. So yes, from my house, I would most likely take Midvale to cross over to Walgreens or over to Shorewood.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to double check because you had given all these options for in your written comments and kind of dismiss the idea of connection between Shorewood Hills and the Midvale shopping area. So I just wanted to double check what your option was when you decided to do that.
And I did not intend to dismiss the Shorewood Hills option. I think there's a small group of cyclists who are from Shorewood Hills. I know a couple of them personally, who make use of the Midvale corridor. But I think it's a very small group. Number one, the population of Shorewood Hills just isn't that big.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I think that with the University Avenue path, it's not just Shorewood Hills people, it's people from the university and things like that. But thank you for your comments.
Sure.
Oh, anybody else have a question for the registrant? Okay, thank you very much for coming. Who do we have next, Aiden?
So next we have Valerie Johnson of South Midvale Boulevard, opposes and wishes to speak.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can, thanks.
Great. My name is Valerie Johnson. I'm a resident of Midvale Boulevard for nearly 10 years. I'm here to express my strong opposition to option 1 and support for option 3. Having lived in 2 different locations on Midvale where parking removal is proposed under option 1, I can tell you that residents in our neighborhood rely on street parking. We depend on it for guests, for family gatherings, for tradespeople. And as noted in previous meetings, removing parking would create a significant hardship, especially for those who are elderly and families with young children like myself. My own in-laws are almost 80 years old and visit us regularly. For them, they would need to walk a significant distance, maybe in bad weather, to the nearest available parking, and doesn't seem reasonable. Furthermore, removing parking would lead to safety concerns. The streets are poorly lit, longer walks at night to those nearest parking spots if they're even available. While I strongly oppose option 1, I fully support a safer Midvale Boulevard and appreciate all the pedestrian improvements. We use the street, we walk the street, we bike the street, but we generally bike on the sidewalk. Midvale is both a residential street and a high traffic artery. It's also a designated emergency route, as has been noted. While confident cyclists may be able to navigate the dangers of the high traffic volume and high rates of speed, the average cyclist cannot. As a parent who bikes with my 2 young children, I would never choose to ride on Midvale due to this reality, even with the option 1. And none of the current proposals will fundamentally change the speeding or the traffic volume. I've heard comments or read some of the comments like option 1 forces people to slow down. And while a buffered bike lane, may force drivers to slow down, that is not a guarantee. And Midvale's core function is a high volume corridor, and that won't change with a painted bike lane. A buffered lane may offer a kind of perceived sense of safety, but it doesn't address the fundamental issue. And the only way to genuinely slow traffic is through some of the physical infrastructure that was suggested in some of the comments, like a parking protected bike lane, which could be explored in the future, as noted in the city's documents with option 3 with a reconstruction of Midvale. So this is why I believe that option 3 is the clear choice, as did over half of the survey respondents, depending on who you're looking at. It's a low cost-effective option. It's a win-win solution. It routes bikes to a dedicated bike boulevard on the Owen and Seago Road, where the city just invested in that physical infrastructure with the protected bike lane. Bike boulevards are a proven strategy for creating that low stress, all ages and abilities routes. It's something we would use. And it's just a smart strategic solution that uses existing infrastructure. So in short, option 3, safe, sensible, cost-effective compromise that benefits everyone, and it provides a safe alternative for cyclists and respects the needs of Midvale residents and community. So I urge you to support option 3 and reject option 1. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Does anyone have a question for the registrant? Okay, seeing no hands, thank you very much for coming. Who do we have next, Aiden?
Next we have Dave Stecker of South Eau Claire Avenue, supports and wishes to speak.
Hey there. I'm Dave Stecker. I'm a year-round cyclist and a parent who shuttles my kids around on a cargo bike. As a father of kids who are learning to bike, I support option 3 and I'm opposed to option 1 and 2. Midvale Boulevard will never be the best place to ride a bike. As an arterial street, there's simply too many cars on it for it to be comfortable. The more cars there are, the more opportunities for a near miss or a direct hit. At the intersection of two arterials, like Midvale Boulevard and Mineral Point Road or Midvale and University Avenue, the priority for users will never be as shown in the graphic. Bikes and pedestrians are always going to be behind the needs of general traffic, freight, buses, and emergency vehicles. The engineering standards, design history are set up to benefit these groups. They'll complain and you'll have to accommodate them. I accept the reality that we have limited funds and engineering time and political will to implement safe streets for bicyclists and pedestrians. That's why the city needs to focus on the areas where there is support. After talking with my friends and many neighbors in the area, the place where there is support for change is the routes that kids take to school and other kid-oriented destinations like parks and pools. Along these routes, what we need to focus on is creating narrow crossings across streets and a network of off-street, all-ages paths that allow kids to get where they need to go. If kids can get there on their own, we parents don't need to drive them, which cuts 1 or 2 round trips in the car for each event and improves kids' sense of independence, which is critical for their mental health. And routes that are great for kids are also the most comfortable for people who are new to biking or walking. Proceeding with option 3 is part of this. It's not the beginning or the end, but it's just a refinement and a focus of a strategy that broadens the circle of people walking, biking, and using other electric mobility devices in the West Side. The biggest issue with Midvale Boulevard is crossing Midvale Boulevard. Although it's striped as 2 lanes in each direction, cars can and do drive down the parking lane when approaching an intersection if they're going to make a right turn. When that right-turning driver is passing a line of stopped cars, they typically don't stop behind the crosswalk if they stop at all, at the peril of the pedestrian or the cyclist crossing the street. I've had many near misses crossing Midvale, both as a pedestrian and while riding a bike. We need curb bulb outs into Midvale Boulevard to prevent cars from driving in the parking lane. Paint and signs are informational. Curbing is consequential. You're going to feel it when you hit it. We need to encourage all drivers to do the right thing and reward the ones who do. Wide streets like Midvale with paint simply tempt drivers to behave badly and make drivers who do follow the rules question themselves. With that in mind, I'm proposing the city take the 2 actions in addition to moving forward with option 3. These changes will keep pedestrians, cyclists, and kids safe as they navigate Midvale. The first is please install curb extensions into Midvale at the intersection with Heather Crest, Regent, Hillcrest, Mineral Point Road to make Midvale just the width of the 2 travel lanes at these crossings. Please use the narrowest width from the Safe Street guidelines, the smallest possible turning radius. This single change would reduce the exposure by over 30% and make crossing Midvale shorter and safer for pedestrians and cyclists. The second is instead of the proposed rectangular flashing beacons, use full pedestrian red, yellow, green stop.
That's your time, sir. Thank you so much for coming. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, seeing no hands, thank you very much for coming. Who do we have next, Aiden?
I'm sorry, Ann. Could I hear the rest of Dave's second comment he made? He said he had two additional choices.
Is anybody opposed to that? Go ahead. Dave, are you still there?
Oh, yes, still here. So instead of the proposed rectangular flashing beacons, I'm asking that you put in a full pedestrian activated red, yellow, green stoplights or a pedestrian full pedestrian hybrid beacon. The full stoplights are needed at a multi-lane street because it frequently happens that one driver will stop and the driver in the next lane over keeps going, as evidenced by several people who have been hit by cars on Gammon Road by Memorial High School, despite the installation of an RRFB a few years ago. We shouldn't repeat the same mistake here, and a full pedestrian cyclist activated stoplight should be installed instead of the proposed RFBs on Midvale where Hillcrest and Heathercrest cross, on University where Blackhawk crosses, and on Mineral Point Road where Owen Drive crosses. I appreciate the consideration for that.
Thank you. Any other questions for the registrant? Okay, thanks for coming. Who do we have next, Aiden?
So next we have Benjamin Noffke of Westmoreland Boulevard, supports and wishes to speak.
Go ahead. You need to unmute.
Oh, sorry. I had a few windows up and that was blocking me. All right. Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
All right. Thanks. All right. Thanks for listening tonight, everyone. And I appreciate all the comments before. I think we probably all heavily agree on wishing to see a safer Midvale. And I think to that end, there would probably have, maybe if we included an additional option on the survey of closing the lane on Midvale and then maybe implementing like a parking protected lane with that additional space, I would expect that that would probably have been a pretty popular option. But formally, I do support option one. I'm a year-round bike commuter. I bike Midvale today. I need to pick up things from the pharmacy, and my only option is to use Midvale, at least for some part of that leg. I'm a confident cyclist. I know not everyone is, but there are others out there. And I think starting to make incremental change on making more space for people is all in all a good thing. I think we should still pursue improvements on Owen and Seago, especially Seago being part of the All Ages and Ability Network. Like, I expect those changes are going to happen no matter what we choose about Midvale. But yeah, I would really like us to more critically evaluate the opportunity for lane reductions. I don't think that future projected traffic volumes are necessarily a valid concern given the trends in traffic volumes everywhere. And besides that, if we make sure to keep those lanes available, we have sort of that induced demand effect. But if we reduce lanes, we can manage demand in that sort of way as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you for coming. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for speaking up. I think you registered in support, and I was just wanted to make sure which option you supported.
Oh, sorry.
If any.
Yeah, I buried it in there. My preferred is option one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, thank you for coming. Who do we have next, Aiden?
So next we have Mark Shahan of Piper Drive, supports and wishes to speak.
Go ahead, Mark.
More. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
One more thing to click. My name is Mark Shahan. I'm a year-round bike commuter and have used Midvale Boulevard at times. And I think Midvale should be outfitted with bike lanes, as has been documented in over 5 studies over the past 50 years. It seems the city seems to be saying we can enhance bike facilities on Seago Road or Midvale or Meadow Lane or Owen Drive, but we can't enhance more than one of those streets at a time. I say, why not? Why can't you enhance the bike facilities on both Seago Road and Midvale Boulevard, the two most viable options in my opinion? I think this is offering up a false dichotomy. Despite what some would have you believe, Midvale is currently used by bicyclists despite its designation as high stress and in poor condition for bicyclists. Strava data that Craig Weinhold has given to the commission suggests that Midvale has slightly less bicyclists at Mineral Point, slightly more at Seago, and more than double the amount on Seago at University Avenue. Midvale would undoubtedly be used by more cyclists if it had bike lanes. Others would have you believe, because of the data described above, that there's no need to have bike lanes on Midvale. That is fine the way it is. What is the problem? What is the problem if bicyclists, quote, may have to deviate around 2 or 3 parked cars? That is exactly the danger on Midvale as it currently exists for bicyclists. Those parked cars cause bicyclists to move into the adjacent motor vehicle lane in quick maneuvers between platoons of fast-moving cars that usually exceed the speed limit. And somebody from UW Health, a medical technician, was asking me about that, and I had to explain to her that the bicyclists are entitled to take the lane when they go around the cars, and that's actually the safest maneuver. And they take Midvale because it's the most direct way for most trips. And this brings me to the 2 main reasons Midvale is superior to other routes for many trips. First reason a lot of bicyclists use Midvale is there are lots of destinations along the street, restaurants, retail, a library, UW Credit Union that I use, Pick and Save, and multiple professional offices. The second reason people use Midvale is it is the logical, most direct route for people living in the eastern part of Midvale Heights neighborhood where I live, the Westmoreland neighborhood, as you just heard, or people coming from further south along Midvale or via the Southwest Path. The Midvale crossing of University Avenue is also one of the safer ones as it has a regular stoplight. Seago doesn't work that well if you're in the eastern part of Midvale Heights neighborhood or Westmoreland. You have a 1.5 up to 1.5 mile detour round trip if you choose to go that way. Some people say, well, bicyclists like that because they want the exercise. That's false, as other people have made clear. Bicyclists are trying to get to destinations just as quickly as people in cars. In fact, bicyclists are more sensitive to detours than cars because the time penalty is higher for bicyclists. In addition, the hills in Tokay, Hilltop, and Agnes are steeper than the,
That's your time, Mark. Does anybody have any, thank you for coming. Does anybody have any questions for the registrant? Okay, I'm seeing no hands. Thank you again for coming. Who do we have? Else do we have, Aiden?
So next we have Paul Latta of West Skyline Drive supports and wishes to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thanks. Go ahead.
My name is Paul Lott. I live on the west side of Madison. Use the Shorewood Path quite a bit and end up down in the area of Walgreens and Pick and Save and the credit union and lots of other businesses there. I have a couple of concerns with the optional routes. I mean, ideal Midvale would be great, and I've had a couple of close calls there myself, one of which I've reported to the city. It's not the greatest. I think bike lanes would improve it. When I look at the other options 2 and option 3, I'm concerned about the RFB, and I think this was mentioned earlier, to cross at Blackhawk. I get kind of scared just crossing 4 lanes because not all the cars stop. If you add that, move that up to 6 lanes, I think your chances of all the cars stopping would be less. When I looked at the data from the Federal Highway Administration, they said the yield rates are something, but a big confidence interval, something between like 19 and 98%, depending upon speed. But I don't think we're going to get 98%, and that's not been my experience. So I have a lot of concern that someone's going to get hit by a car that doesn't stop. The other concern, I have a concern about the RFB, and then the other concern I have is just, will people really want to go that far out of their way? So if you're standing at Walgreens looking across the street at Hilldale, are cyclists really going to want to go 6 blocks out of their way to do that. I'm not sure people will do that. I think we'll still have people riding on Midvale. And so for that reason, those reasons primarily, I would support option 1 if I need to pick one. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for coming. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, seeing no hands, thanks again for coming. Who else do we have?
Next, we have Blake Wassong of Laurel Crest. Neither supports or opposes and wishes to speak.
Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
We can, thanks. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I would like to say first that I support option 1, and I mimic a lot of the things I've heard that we are talking about pushing the bike traffic off of Midvale when improvements can be made to other streets. But Midvale, as stated before, has shown to need bike infrastructure. Looking at the West Area Plan, it does note that Midvale should have on-street bike facilities. And kind of going through some of the different things that have been brought up, one of them being that Midvale is an emergency route. And I'm not sure if people understand, but parked cars can't move for emergency vehicles. Whereas someone on a bike lane is very easily able to move out of the way and help clear the path for these emergency vehicles, helping reduce response time for ambulances, police, and firefighters. Another big thing is that it's been brought up again, RFEs and pushing cyclists away from the signalized intersections that would be available at Midvale are not safe when they're crossing multiple lanes. We saw this with West Washington and having to reduce that crossing to 1 lane each way due to safety concerns. So people saying that we should maintain parking at the expense of bike infrastructure for safety for cyclists seems absurd to me. Personally, I'm a year-round bicycle commuter. I've never been on Midvale because I don't feel comfortable sharing the lane or taking the lane when there's a parked car in the parking lane with 40-mile-an-hour traffic. I would use this if it was a buffered bike lane. I know that people have said that because it is not a all ages and abilities network, that we shouldn't have any bike infrastructure there. But that doesn't mean we can't have some that is good for intermediate and advanced bikers. Yes, I agree that kids should not be in buffered bike lanes on Midvale, but there are plenty of people who do use bikes for commuting. This would open up avenues for them that currently there is no option. Trying to get from the University Avenue bike path down to the Hilldale area is honestly pretty hard. People talk about going to Seago, but going from the path on University onto Seago is kind of a pain, and you're not really in any kind of a no man's land going through there from a parking lot, which people very rarely look to see if anyone's going from that area. I've almost been hit there several times. So adding in these bike facilities would give a more direct route, a safer route, and one other thing people mentioned, cars using the parking lane to turn. By converting this from a parking lane into a clearly marked buffered bike lane should hopefully reduce that behavior, thus making the area safer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, seeing no hands, thank you very much for coming. Aiden, do we have anyone else? Okay.
Our last registrants don't wish to speak, but it's Amy Kolos of South Midvale Boulevard, registered opposing, and Amanda Halbach of South Midvale Boulevard, registered as neither support nor oppose.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Chris.
Yeah, thanks. I've actually got a question for Linda Kruger if they're still available.
Linda, are you still there? Okay, she's there. Go ahead. Yep.
Sorry, I didn't want to catch you off guard. Thanks for coming out. We've heard from a bunch of different perspectives, so I was hoping to get your take on something. We've heard from folks who feel comfortable just taking the lane. A couple folks said they would never bike on Midvale, definitely not with my family. I think you said you live on Midvale and like to bike with your family. I was wondering if you could just walk us through what that would typically look like, taking your family biking from your house.
So actually my son attends Midvale School, so to drop him off, I go down Bagley to Owen and I drive up Owen and then I come up on Caramar on the backside of Midvale School. So I do that bike regularly to drop him off and pick him up. I very often take the bike boulevard to go like towards the downtown area. If I'm going to, let's say, like the UW Credit Union area by the Pick and Save, I would go 1 block over. I'd take Regent, 1 block to the east, and then I'd go down Meadow, and then pop up on the sidewalk. And I usually just have a small area where I walk my bike because I do a combination of things. I have a seat that my son sits on my bike, but then also my son bikes separately. So depending on if he's on his own bike or if he's on my bike, I make different decisions.
So you feel comfortable biking on Midvale just to get to those crossroads?
I bike on the sidewalk to get to the next corner on either side of my block.
Okay.
I never, in fact, I would say I've lived here for 14 years. I have never once biked on the street on Midvale. I've always taken the sidewalk to get to the next corner and then I head back to the next block over.
Would you say there's room to pass someone or maybe someone in a wheelchair if you were doing that?
Absolutely. Well, so I can't even think of an example when I've seen someone on a wheelchair, but I have absolutely passed pedestrians. I've passed other little kids on bikes, parents with strollers, and I choose to either slow down, put my foot down, just kind of pop over to the side. But I would say in general, the sidewalks are incredibly clear, and I'd say 90% of the time I bike, I don't see one other pedestrian of any type on the sidewalk, so I almost never run into that situation. But if I do, I just slow down or stop or pop on the grass.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the question.
Thanks. And anybody have any other questions for the registrants before we move on to comments, questions and discussions about the various options? Okay, then we'll move on to comments or questions for Tom or Chris, or things that you would like to discuss. Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, for options 2 and 3, at some point, bicyclists are going to be dumped onto Midvale at the south end at either Bagley or I can't remember where I'd have to look at the map where the Owen route comes out. Where does the Owen route come out on the south side? I don't have it in front of me right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna, I think I'm sharing, maybe not.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, so option 2 is between Midvale and then Black Hawk at University Avenue, and option 3.
No, but you turn off of Midvale on Bagley for option 2.
Yep.
Okay, on and off Midvale at Bagley. Okay, and then for option 3, you go all the way down to Mineral Point?
Yep, and cross Mineral Point.
Oh, okay. So I guess for option 2, maybe my question is, how does one who is coming south and wants to continue south on Midvale, how do you make a left turn off of Bagley when there's heavy traffic?
Mm-hmm. Right, we didn't have anything planned there other than, what's existing.
And then you are still on Midvale with no facilities until you get to Mineral Point.
So for this option 2, we would remove on-street parking between Mineral Point Road and Bagley.
Oh, okay. But that left turn is,
Right. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. That left turn would be unsignalized. We would have for the rapid flashing beacon. We're planning on it being on the south side of Hillcrest.
wait, Hillcrest or Bagley?
At Hillcrest. That
Okay.
was the yeah.
Doesn't the map show it, the route going up Bagley?
Yeah, so it's kind of two different things. We got the bike route using Bagley to connect up, but one of the main pieces of feedback we had from early on was that pedestrians wanted help at Hillcrest.
Okay.
So, and we are looking into the map kind of shows it here. There's a missing sidewalk link on Hillcrest, but we are looking into adding that sidewalk in the future along the south side of Hillcrest. And then this also kind of connects, there's a pedestrian route back through Merleham that goes between homes to get to the school.
Right. Okay. No, I'm trying to figure out if people are coming south on Meadow Lane, right?
Yep.
Okay. And they end up on Bagley.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then they end up on the corner of Midvale. How do they turn left?
Right. We just have it as unsignalized.
Okay. So there's no way to make that. I mean, they're just dumped out onto Midvale with no accommodations going southbound until they get past Mineral Point Road.
Right. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that was what we're looking at here.
Yep.
Okay. And then let's see. For Owen, they end up I can't see actually where Owen comes out on. I mean, I see that there's, that little box is kind of, okay. So if you're on Owen and you want to continue south, then it's a little small because of I'm on a laptop. It's hard for me to see.
Yeah. Owen going south. So this was, if we were to choose this route, we would look into anything more we could do, but Owen does have speed humps right now. Keating to Caramar then connects to the school. But we could look into further options further to the south for that route. I mean, we'd pretty much be limited to like the bike boulevard treatment for this signing and marking.
But if somebody wants to get further south on Midvale, then they somehow have to make a left at some point, an unsignalized left onto Midvale, right?
Oh, right. If you're on Owen and you're eventually making it over to Midvale?
Correct.
Right. I guess they could go down all the way to Tokay.
Okay. Yeah. I was having a little hard time with the map because that text box was over it and I couldn't quite see where it ended.
Yeah. Yep.
So you can go all the way down to Tokay. Yeah, that works. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then on Seago, have there been any discussions at all about a crossing of University Avenue and a route that would connect to the Blackhawk path on the north side? I mean, you've got what is that now? The state, is it Department of Revenue is in that building? I don't know who's in that building now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're talking right here at Seago. We have not looked into anything further here. I guess right now, as a bicyclist, you would get, the proper way to do it. You can cut through the property, but the official route is to use Old Middleton, use the ramp to get to the path, or I guess depending where you're going, you could go east on University Avenue.
If you're going east.
Yeah. Yeah, so then you're kind of left with making a crossing somewhere along this point. So part of our issue with Midvale is that north of Midvale is the village. So we kind of need their buy-in to do anything on Rose Place or anything to the north here.
I was just wondering because when people are suggesting Seago, you just kind of get dumped, right? You get dumped onto a giant road, and a lot of people are trying to make that connection to that path or to Locust Street.
Yeah.
And honestly, Rose Place is fine. The traffic's pretty slow. It's no problem there. But then you're on Midvale. So I'm just trying to figure out when people are giving these options for Owen, Meadow, and Seago, how do you continue the route? That's my question.
Yeah.
And so, I'll give more comments on because I do that crossing a lot. But I just wanted to see if there had been any thought into making the crossings of both Midvale to continue south when you run out of Parallel Road, or especially on the east side of Midvale, or crossings of University Avenue. I'm intrigued by this RRFB, and what are your thoughts on the chances of it actually working?
Yeah, so we looked into this in pretty good detail based off existing RFBs, and everyone knows about the issues at the Southwest Path. So the issues at the Southwest Path are kind of two different reasons. There's the high volume with the multi-lane on West Washington Avenue, but then there's the really high volume on the path itself, which leads to people, a lot of bicyclists not choosing to push the button, bicyclists going through fast while pedestrians push the button and go through slow. So there's a lot of piggybacking on people that have previously pushed the button, or the flasher is just continuously going. So that's the real danger. So the combination of the high volume on both the street and the path. On other locations where we have RFBs, so we've got a few on multi-lane. We've got East Washington Avenue at 2nd Street. We have East Washington Avenue at Kedzie. That's right here. We have East Washington Avenue further out, closer to 51 at Schmiedemann. That's right here. We've got some on Packers Avenue up by Northport, and those have all have pretty good safety records because they're infrequently used. So when drivers see the light flashing, they know something is going on. Whereas at West Washington Avenue, as a driver, you see it flashing. That's just normal. It's just every day. It's always flashing. So it's infrequent at those locations, and it's usually just a single pedestrian crossing. So you can identify who's crossing. Where at West Washington Avenue, you might see someone crossing and yield to them, but then there's someone coming up behind them at this, right after, as you're watching that person get across, there's someone else coming that you don't see. So the feeling is that they do work on high volume streets as long as the crossings are infrequent and low volume.
So, first of all, I think that West Washington, first of all, has been reduced now to one lane in each direction. So you don't have the multi-lane threat. Midvale and the Southwest Path might be a better test because you've got a fairly high volume road and a high volume path. But then if we're suggesting that Meadow is going to then feed into a crossing at Blackhawk to get to the path on the north side, or Locust, actually, it's not a path there. That's going to be a pretty high volume crossing, and University Avenue is gigantic. So I guess my question is, what do you think the chances are that that combination of a lot of north-south crossings at Blackhawk and a gigantic road with 3 lanes plus turn lanes in each direction is actually going to work?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. If the volume does get really high on Blackhawk, then that would be a concern. Our expectation is it's still going to be far lower than what, the Southwest path is. It's just nonstop. So we expect it to still be lower than that. Where if the light's flashing, you can pretty much identify who's doing the crossing, and it's not a steady flow.
I'm not sure that's the case at Midvale, but okay.
At Midvale, we see the kind of the same thing at Midvale. So, or are you talking Midvale
I'm
at the
talking the
Southwest?
Southwest Path and Midvale.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we see some of the same things at Midvale and the Southwest Path. That's more lower volume, but we still see the kind of the piggybacking issue of bikes are coming fast down the path that are trying to go off of someone who previously pushed the button, and then getting struck by a driver who thinks it's clear.
Or the driver's not yielding at all.
Yeah, I'd have to go back, and I know we looked at the crash reports. I don't know how many of those there are. I just remember seeing that yielding for one and then striking the second.
Right. Well, I think that there's relying on crash reports to see whether it's safe to cross is a little bit of a chicken and egg, because bicyclists are, despite what a lot of drivers think, are pretty good at self-preservation. And if they don't see somebody stopping or noticing them, they are not going to ride into the intersection. If somebody else has pushed the button and there's already a flashing light, and cars were already stopped, then yes, they may cross. But my concern is people not stopping in the first place. And then, of course, bicyclists are, if the drivers don't stop, they're not going to ride into the intersection. But with University Avenue, so if you are looking at crash reports, you're looking at people who did try and attempt to cross, not at people who were not able to cross because people are not yielding. And so I think University Avenue would be a much bigger concern, because I just am very concerned that 3 lanes are going to stop at the same time. And then you've got the median, and then you've got another 3 lanes. Plus, I don't know if there's left turn lanes at Blackhawk as well. So that's 4 lanes on one side. So you've got a total of 7 lanes. And I think that's my concern. I mean, I will tell you, because I do access the credit union and Walgreens and Pick and Save and the Ace Hardware on Midvale and Century and the Great Dane Pub and Cafe Hollander and many other things in Hilldale. I'm going to keep riding on Midvale, because that's how I cross University Avenue. And it's the only way that I can cross at this time. And I'm not going to ride on the sidewalk, especially on the west side, because I've tried that, and there's a lot of pedestrians. There are a lot of pedestrians that come out of Century and walk up the sidewalk to get to the BRT stop, because that's where all the university students shop. or not so much Century, but Target. And they also shop at many other shops. So that sidewalk is very busy. So I'm not going to use that sidewalk, which means I'm on Midvale, and I'm going to continue to be on Midvale. But I'm a much slower cyclist than I am now. So I'm going to be in people's way, but that's the only safe way that I can see to access those destinations from where I live. And I'm coming from Locust and Rose Place. I will see if that RRFB works, but I am concerned, which means that would leave people with no way to cross University Avenue from Meadow or Blackhawk. And I think that's a disservice. So I'm done.
Okay. Thanks, Robbie. If I before you go, Chris, can I just say to the registrants who spoke, you've had your turn already, and so this is the time for the TC members and alders to have their opportunity to speak. Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. Tom, I was hoping to get a little more big picture perspective. This is a familiar situation where we've got a resurfacing that we're trying to come close to complete streets and running into the challenges of doing that in a resurfacing project. If we, wait for the reconstruct 10 years down the road or whatever it is, what are we hoping we can do then? Preserve 2 lanes, parking, bike lanes, and trees, and get everything we want?
Right. So if when it is fully reconstructed, everything will be torn up. Curb, likely the median. I'd have to look back at where the utilities are, but since we're not really doing any utilities on this project, we're not getting into the median at all, or the terraces. But right, we could have different options for the full reconstruct. We could have an off-street path, kind of like what we're looking at on Flaum right now. We could narrow up the median to provide this space for everything.
So the median is up in the air.
Yeah, I think with a full reconstruct, that just opens up the opportunity to get into that. Where right now, if we were to get into the median, to get everything that we want right now basically means cutting into the median kind of 3 feet on each side, which then you also need to get a little bit further to get the curb in. It would likely mean the majority of the trees being gone.
Okay, that's helpful. I just wasn't sure how big we were thinking the scope of that could be, especially with trees. So
yeah, and there's also kind of a grade difference here. This side, so this is Mineral Point Road right here. This side is quite a bit higher than the southbound side. So we'd be getting into possibly some wall issues down at this end.
Okay, that's helpful. There's a lot of little nuances in the alternative routes, like Robbie was sort of trying to pick apart. I'm wondering about the Mineral Point at Owen Drive crossing. Which I know we have, I don't know if you're able to put the slide back up, but I have it in front of me. I know we have some cases where bike paths sort of coincide with crosswalks in sort of a weird shared facility type of situation like this. Is there a reason to do this, like have the bikes go up onto the sidewalk and use the crosswalk rather than just designate a bike lane through the intersection?
So to legally use the RRFB, you have to be acting as a pedestrian. So to push that, so this allows the bicyclist to push the button and use the RRFB as a pedestrian. We have seen some other designs where you kind of get the bike close here, but I think for this area, mixing them in is probably the best way to go. So we would have push buttons on either side for the bicyclist to use and still legally use it.
Okay. I mean, for what it's worth, I know there are different types of cyclists. I would not like go that out of my way to push a button. So that's one of my concerns. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. That's all you had then, Chris? Just double checking. Okay. Harold, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. I also have a couple high level and then maybe also a couple more detailed questions. So with regard to the improvements presented in options 2 and 3, I mean, clearly the way the survey was phrased, and I think that's how people also understood it, is like either you get bike lanes on Midvale or you get the other improvements. And I guess I'm kind of like, I mean, why is that a budget thing? Is that do you see that based on like, oh, well, if we improve Midvale, then we don't have to make the other improvements? Or can you explain, like, how did you come up with these options that were presented as exclusive of each other? At least I think that's how I understood them.
Yeah, good question. Right. It's kind of where should we put our focus? So if we put our focus on Midvale, budget wise, right, we're trying to keep this within a resurfacing project. So we would not include other things as part of this project. We would probably separate that. It doesn't mean we can't do it. It would just that we would separate that out into a separate project and not have it paid through the resurfacing contract, just for budget wise, yeah.
Right. So it's more similar to, like, say, the BRT project on East Wash and then the additional Safe Streets project that were made that were kind of linked to BRT and not having a facility on East Wash, but they were separate contracts. They came back to TC. They happened in different years. Some of them we learned were more difficult than we anticipated.
Right. So that's probably what we would do here is that if we were to choose, if everyone's good with option 1, we'd probably come back with Safe Streets projects or as a Safe Streets project to look at Seago and to look at Owen, and evaluate those through the Safe Streets program.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I think people were definitely confused. Like, they felt strongly about one or the other of the improvement, like on, say, Seago, because that's where they mostly bike, and therefore they supported that option, thinking it was exclusive. So yeah, I think this, yeah. Other big picture items. So you presented the complete Green Streets Guide. It's a boulevard. According to that, it should have a protected bike facility. You showed the no stress bike network where Midvale was not included, but I think some commenters mentioned it, and also in some of the written comment, it was pointed out that the area plans have Midvale as a bike connection. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can bring that up to separate. So the West Area Plan has Midvale identified as an on-street route protected bike facility. Right, this was adopted September of last year. There was a feedback process for that. And at that time, there were a few comments opposed to it, but definitely wasn't, I don't think, discussed at the level that we're looking at it now. And then the Imagine Madison Comprehensive Plan also identifies Midvale. So 2 different plans here. It was updated to have on-street facilities in the last plan.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can have an argument. I mean, these are the area plans, so they don't specify we need to implement this now, and so you could argue like, oh, well, maybe we'll do it in the 10 reconstructions 10 years from now. But okay, that's good to know that there are several plans that call for low stress bike facilities on Midvale. Okay. The topic of speeding came up, and I'm trying, this was a long time ago in 2023 when this first came as a Safe Streets project. And I think speeding was one of the concerns that first put it on the list in addition to bike concerns or like not having bike facilities. Do you have a sense if option one is going to help with speeding or some of the improvements with bump outs?
Right. I would say, based on experience from previous projects, that option one, just a painted line, is going to have, close to no effect on speeding. Bump outs, I can show what we've dreamt up what the bump outs may look like. They're not as big as we would like because we need to maintain the turning vehicle, the turning radius. These are showing 3-foot bump outs. If anything, these would have more of an effect on speed. So we've got bump outs at Hillcrest, Regent. And again, a lot of these are based off of maintaining truck turning movements, like to different places where without having the truck having to take the other lane. I think these are also 3-foot bump outs. And then at Heathercrest. So we can shorten up the pedestrian crossings a little bit. Might provide some narrowing of a field for slower speeds, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, we have argued that making lanes narrower does provide a speeding reduction benefit. And I mean, especially in a case like where you right now, the right lane looks like it's 20 feet wide, basically, when there's no parking. I mean, so I would expect that paint probably has some impact.
Actually, yeah, one thing I didn't mention that we are planning to do kind of regardless. So say we just leave Midvale alone as far as parking and lane configuration. We do plan on adding a lane line or lane lines on the right side here to kind of designate and narrow up the feel of that right lane. So a lot of the time, if no one's parked for a block, this is like a 20-foot lane. So we will mark that out to provide some sort of narrowing at least.
Okay. And that maybe ties into my last piece. Can you go back to that slide that showed the traffic volumes? Talk a little bit. Some people brought up the lane reduction idea.
Yeah. So right here. I could just go into this a little bit more detail, what this table showing. Sure. So this is kind of showing volumes graphically and chronologically. So down here at the south is Mineral Point Road, then Regent, Heathercrest, and University Avenue. So these are the signalized intersections. Green means we could get by with one lane. So this side is the southbound side. This side is the northbound side. Yellow means it's borderline. These are hourly volumes during the peak hour. And red means we need 2 lanes. So during the morning, the southbound side could get by with one lane, pretty much no question. The issue is in the afternoon, it's heavy, and we need 2 lanes. With the exception kind of up here north of Heathercrest, the volumes right now are lower than what they've kind of historically been. So that's the southbound side. The northbound side, again, the further north you go, the lower the volumes get. So you can see this column is the morning. So the morning it's heavy volume to Regent. A lot of people peel off on Regent Street and it's lower north of Regent. But in the past, it was higher between Regent and Heathercrest. And then north of Heathercrest, it's still kind of low. So we kind of need the 2 lanes. It's borderline up here, maybe you could get by with one lane right now. But part of this is development and Madison Yards. They did a traffic impact analysis that showed additional volume coming from here using Midvale, and you can see they're still not fully built out here. So they do have some space for some more development. And then, impact to businesses in the Hilldale area. I think any sort of lane reduction is borderline at best right now, and we can at least in this area achieve the same thing with what our original proposal was to cut into the median. So that's kind of why we backed off of looking too far into that lane reduction.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was striking to me to see the traffic volumes basically being flat over the whole. Like, I don't think there was any location where traffic volumes were higher than they were in 2015, neither in the AM or the PM, which is a separate question than what the absolute volumes are. But, projections about the future are always uncertain, I suppose. Okay, I think those. I think you started early on that Midvale is classified as a boulevard and complete green streets, but it only kind of fits. And I think you mentioned the driveways being what makes it different.
So kind of a boulevard is called, longer blocks, few driveways. But there's many driveways, and that's part of the reason this was another thing brought up that I could address is the the protected bike lane. So it's difficult to do any sort of protection when you have this many driveways and this spacing of driveways, because we need to keep in mind we've got to have access to the driveways. People have got to be able to get out and in, and so it really ends up in a really disjointed protection. If we were to use curb or something, you can compare it to Seagull Road, where very few driveways, so that kind of opened up the opportunity to do the concrete protection for bikes with just openings at the few driveways. But Midvale is kind of a lot more difficult for the protection.
Yeah, which I think is good to keep in mind to come back to Chris's point about like 10 years from now, if we do a reconstruct, I mean, that's not going to be a problem that's going to be any less. So if we want to have an off-street path, it's going to be an off-street path that will have driveways every, however many feet. Okay, those were the questions I had for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Harold. Alder Bitterberg, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask the committee's discretion to go ahead and just give my comments because I have to get to another meeting. So if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I am the alder for the district that is half of this project. And I join the overwhelming response from both my constituents as well as the rest of the city in going for option 3. So obviously we've talked about the number one issue is speeding, and parked cars actually do help slow speeding. And I believe is valuable to retain until we are at a place where if we can, it's a good point about the driveways, if we can add in protections, that they do help to slow the drivers. And my understanding is that was actually part of your discussion when you were talking about BRT on Park Street and maintaining the parking there, was to help slow traffic. As we've talked about, the data on parking is always incomplete. Just my own experience coming back after a community meeting that was at Sequoia Library, there were probably 25 cars parked on the south end of Midvale Boulevard. So just all of that data is a point in time data. And so it's just always inherently incomplete. I do realize parking is a privilege, not a right, but it is still a much used resource that will certainly represent a loss of services for these residents. We talked about that no matter what, we're going to narrow the traffic lanes and put that white stripe. And so that is going to create ideally a feeling of narrower space and hopefully reduce speeding anyway. And then I do want the committee to think about equity. So the south part of Midvale, obviously it's a slightly wider, but it has that single white line that is a shared parking and bike facility. And so why should the people at the north side have a different situation than the people living on the south side. So those are my comments. I know that you all are contemplating this with a lot of care to the variety of interests. But again, just thinking about the number of people who responded to the survey was really substantial, and they gave a pretty overwhelming response. And one of our duties is also to respect the wishes of our constituents. So I will leave it at that and move on to my next event. And I appreciate your discretion in allowing me to speak now. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Alder, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. Alder Tischler, go ahead.
Yeah, just wondering if I could give a few comments following, because I a lot of what Alder Vidovere said I agree with, but I will respect not jumping in line.
Go ahead. We oftentimes combine questions with comments here at TC, so go ahead.
All right, and I'll be polite and turn on my camera if it's all right. No, I also agree with Alder Vidovere that option 3, and as one resident said, is a safe and sensible choice for residents. And I also want to respect the public input. It was quite impressive how many people turned out to contribute to the survey, and I want to thank city staff for making this option available and giving people choices. As the city staff mentioned, we know we cannot do a full reconstruction now, but we will have the opportunity in the future. And also, given how tight money is right now, option 3 is the least expensive of the choices. And I think it makes a smart investment in north-south bike routes by improving nearby streets to Midvale Boulevard, Seago and Owen. It will create a much kind of a quieter. Those routes are quieter, little more comfortable routes for people biking. I think we need to look at areas that already have a lot of strong public support, especially with people kind of all ages. I will add that I grew up in this area. I've been walking, biking, driving, for well over 50 years. And I think it's important that by making the investment in looking at and educating people about the Seago and Owen Drive. These are routes that a lot of people are already taking right now, especially young kids on their way to school, and they will not only get develop the habits of biking, but also if I have 3 children. If I felt that there was a safe way for kids to get to school, get to visit their friends, I'd be more comfortable, and I would be doing less driving, especially when they're at a young age. So I think option 3 is something we can start to make the investments in now and still look ahead, at Midvale Boulevard in the future. So just wanted to add those additional comments. I also want to thank by adding the safer ways to cross the streets. That I tell my kids that I walk to school in the snow uphill both ways, crossing Midvale Boulevard at Hillcrest, for 3 years. So that was decades ago, but it was dangerous to cross the street then. It is now. So I really appreciate the fact that whatever the decision is, that we are going to be making it safer to cross that street. That is something that I have been wanting for quite some time. So thank you for allowing me to talk.
Sure. No, absolutely. Okay. Other comments or questions? Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. The comment from the 2 alders made me think of 2 more questions. Right, in the survey data, you didn't ask how people usually. I know some of your surveys, you have like, how do you primarily use the street? That's a question. Like, you didn't include that this time, right? So we can't break that up.
No, right. We just presented the options.
Okay. And then, do you have information on the gradient of the different streets? I know Owen has a very steep section, and then Middale has a different steep section and a different section, and Seago is pretty level. That's kind of my rough summary from my own experience.
Yeah. So so here's Midvale, 3.5% grade. Kind of higher here at Mineral Point. So if you're looking at the graph on the bottom, to the left would be Mineral Point Road, and to the right would be University Avenue. So Midvale, that hill is about 3.5% grade. So same Mineral Point Road at the left, University Avenue at the right. So with this route, there is some steeper hills. This hill is kind of up here by Lucia Crest. So it's a smaller hill, but it's still steep for that short period. And then Owen Drive kind of has the biggest hill. Mineral Point Road, you're up high, and then as you go north, you drop down the 6% grade to University Avenue. So this Mineral Point Road, generally, it's lower down at Midvale, and then it goes up, so that's the extra grade for this route.
Okay, that is useful. And regarding the Mineral Point crossing, I know a long time ago we had a proposal to potentially reduce the number of lanes on Mineral Point there, and I know it didn't go anywhere in the end. Is there still some thought on that? Because that would make that crossing, that would make a big difference in crossing compared to keeping it 2 lanes in each direction, having the RRFB.
Yeah, that is kind of a study we're still working on, so we plan to bring that probably next year. We'll kind of do the whole public engagement process with Mineral Point Road and analyzing the data. So that's still in the works, and that is very similar to Midvale. It's a resurfacing project from Midvale to the east. So it's going to be a similar discussion as what we're having right now with Midvale about what we do with the street, and can we reduce lanes or change anything, provide better pedestrian crossings. It's very similar. It's really difficult to cross Mineral Point Road at a lot of these intersections. So yeah.
Right. Low parking utilization, probably even lower there. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those were my questions.
Okay. So we've had a lot of discussion. Where are we relative to what people think about the various options that are being offered? Tom or Chris, did you have anything to add after all of the discussion that we've had before we get Commissioner's thoughts on the various options? I do have a question. One thing that I don't recall us talking about it. Will we need for option 1 or 2? I think it's only 1 or 2, maybe 3, but probably not. Would we need a public hearing at TC to remove residential permit parking?
Yes.
And under which options would that be?
That is only option 1. We'd be removing a couple blocks of residential permitted parking on the west side, and there might be a block on the east side too. But yes, we would need to do that for option 1.
Okay, so if I'm not suggesting anything, I just want people to understand that if we were to move forward with option 1, there would be another step that we would need to, and we would plan to do that likely at the next meeting, have a public hearing with regard to the RP3, removing the residential permit parking. So before we could do option 1, we would have to have that next step. Would that be correct, Tom?
Right. Yep.
Okay. So that wouldn't be necessary for option 2 or option 3.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And what do you think is the safest option for bikers on Midvale? I'm assuming it's option 1 versus option 2.
Oh, is
from
that?
a traffic engineering standpoint? What do you think option one, my personal impression is that option one is safer for bikers than option two. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Right. For option one, that's going to be the only one that has a dedicated bike lane throughout the length of Midvale. So, yep.
So that would be safer.
Yeah.
And then my last question, and then I'll flip it to Chris, relates to, it sounds to me like, and I don't bike over there, so I'm not personally someone that would be impacted by this. But it sounds to me like people would still bike on Midvale, even if we make improvements on Owen and Seago. And it sounds like from the questions that Harold asked and answers that you gave, that if we were to choose option one, we could still go ahead under Safe Streets Madison and make some improvements on Owen and Seago. But if we just made improvements on Owen and Seago, people would still bike on Midvale, and there would still be the issues that we've heard about today with regard to how potentially unsafe that is to bike on Midvale. Would that be right, Tom?
Right. For bicyclists, yes, that's right. So yeah, the trade-off is kind of right here. I kind of listed in the pros and cons. It creates a lower stress north-south bike route. Keeps the parking just in this location, but removes parking for everyone else. But and then I think this was kind of also mentioned, is that it's really not in all ages and abilities bike route. Even if we do add this, it's still still a little bit of stress on this.
Because there isn't there's no barrier.
Right.
So, right. No, I understand that. Thanks. I'm just trying to understand all of the various options, and wanted to make sure that we covered the fact that if we were to decide to ask you to move forward to option one, that we would need to hold that public hearing on the residential permit parking to remove it. Chris, did you have something? No, you had your hand up before.
I'm reluctant to speak first now.
Okay, Robbie, how about if we let Robbie go and then you can decide. Robbie, go ahead.
So I just want to clarify, because for people who don't necessarily bike up and down Midvale, Alder Vidovar mentioned that there's not like a dedicated bike lane south of Mineral Point, but I just want to point out that I was actually on the council the last time we repaved Midvale, and this exact discussion happened, except that the conclusion was bicyclists can just ride in the lane north of Midvale. So the expectation was that bicyclists would bike on Midvale and take up a lane north of Mineral Point Road. And the reason for that is that north of Mineral Point, it is much narrower. So there is no line next to the parked cars, because it does not qualify as a combined bike and parking lane. There is not enough space to mark it as a combined bike and parking lane north of Midvale. North of Mineral Point. South of Mineral Point, there is a line there because that curb lane is wide enough for a parked car and a bicyclist to safely share. So that's why the area between Mineral Point and University Avenue is so critical, because there is a facility. It may not be comfortable for everyone, but there is a way to bike on that part of Midvale, south of Mineral Point Road, without being in an active car driving lane. But north of Mineral Point, it is impossible to actually bike and get to any destinations on Midvale without being in an active driving lane. So I just wanted to make that clear for people who may not know that. And also that this discussion came up before, and it was debated very hotly at the council. And the conclusion was, we expect bicyclists to use Mineral Point Road in the active traffic lane to get to destinations such as Hilldale. So that was the decision, probably more than 15, maybe even 20 years ago, when we were not building protected facilities. And hopefully we have a different conclusion now, but it still remains, as you mentioned, that people will be biking on on Midvale because that's how they reach those destinations. So just when people are making their decision, I just want them to sort of be able to picture what the conditions are in the different parts. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. Other comments or questions? What are your thoughts about the various options? Carl?
Maybe to stimulate discussion, I'm going to make a motion if that's appropriate.
Sure.
So I would move that we recommend moving forward with option 1 and request staff to further pursue the safety improvements on Seago and the Owen corridor as separate Safe Streets projects. And for the longer term, when the street is fully reconstructed, consider options for adding back in parking to address resident concerns about on-street parking on Midvale.
Okay, hang on. So the first part I've got, move that we recommend moving forward with option 1, number 1, and request staff pursue the improvements on Owen and Seago as Safe Streets Madison projects. And then you're going to have to repeat the last part.
And for the planned reconstruction in the future, consider options of. Sorry, I had it more elegant the first way around, and now I'm like, consider adding back on-street parking as possible in the full reconstruction in the future.
Okay, I'm going to read back what I have, and then you tell me if I've got it. Move that we recommend moving forward with option number 1 and request staff pursue the improvements on Owen and Seago as Safe Streets Madison projects. And for the planned reconstruction in the future, we consider adding back on-street parking in that reconstruction. Is that correct?
Yes, that captures it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, that was a long one. Robbie?
Sorry.
Second.
That's okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So did you wish to speak to your motion, Harold?
Yeah, sure. So what's motivating my the motion is what I heard today, what I heard in previous meetings, in the written comments that I did all read, except maybe for the ones that came at the very last minute. But then also by our overarching city policy and plans. So to think back, we are discussing this partially because we have an adopted Complete Green Streets guide that for a boulevard such as Midvale says there should be protected bike facilities. We can't do that. We have a modal hierarchy that puts walking on top, parking at the bottom, biking in between. That also seems to speak to the necessity of making improvements on Midvale. And we have 2 area plans that identify Midvale as an important north-south connection. The possibility of creating a true low stress facility in the future has been brought up. I think based on the discussion, what I heard today, I am worried that 10 years from now, we would find ourselves in a similar situation. And we would find out that, like, yeah, the driveways make it impossible to add a truly low stress facilities, or maybe it would narrowing the median is not possible without taking street trees, which I don't want, which many people will not want. So going with option one provides a much improved facility to what there is now, because right now, while people use Midvale on a bike, it is absolutely not comfortable. That's my own experience as well, and opens up for further improvements. And yeah, maybe we can add in parking in the full reconstruct, but we don't rely on the full reconstruct to creating a safe connection on Midvale. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Harold. So discussion on the motion. Bill.
Thanks, Ann. When I came into this evening, I was thinking that I would prefer option three, but the more that I've heard the discussion today about the weaknesses, the grade on Owen is not going to make that very friendly for all ages and abilities. But I'm more concerned about the connections, especially at University Avenue, that I don't think those are going to be as safe as I would like to see. So I think it's going to be a challenge to get the terminal ends of those Seago and Owen. So for that reason, I changed and throughout the discussion this evening, I think option one is the best route to go at this particular point in time, and I agree with Harl's motion. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Other comments? Alder Tischler, go ahead.
Right. And in regards to like when you kind of get to the end of Seago, Eau Claire is kind of the route that I always take, and you just can go underneath University Avenue. We've made some changes there to improve that, so that is a safe route to go. Does take you to it does also take you to the end of Seago is also where we made a lot of improvements with the protected bike lanes. But then again, we also we removed on-street parking for Sheboygan, cuts right over to Eau Claire, and then again we have ability to safely cross at Old Middleton. So, but that again, that's on my side of the district. I also just want to stress that we did take the time and to survey and get responses. Ask the public what they want. We can't just simply ignore what the public is asking. And I don't think there was confusion among people in my district. I don't underestimate their ability to understand the situation. So again, I urge also my colleagues, alders on the council. I mean, if this is in your area, you've heard from two alders where we would like to, the option that we see best. To go through all this, asking the public, this is one of the highest survey results. I mean, to then not take that into consideration, I think is disrespectful. That's all.
Thanks, Alder. Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. It's obviously a tough one because we have a bunch of policy versus what a bunch of survey responses say. I would say to that, we have a bunch of policies in place so that we don't have to sort of debate every decision on street design that we make, right, case by case. And in this case, we have several plans. We have the low stress network plan. We have complete green streets, and we have Vision Zero that all point toward making Midvale safer for people walking and biking. And so I think this is our opportunity to do that in alignment with all of those policies and plans that we have. I think the survey, I don't think folks taking that survey were confused, right? Surveys can be tricky if you're presenting people with, do you want to keep your parking or not, right? That's sort of like an easy yes or no question for a lot of people, and it's difficult to weigh the considerations of the bigger picture in those cases. And that's why we landed on so many people choosing option 3, because it looks like I get to keep my parking and get some safety improvements. I don't think that's how we should be approaching this project in particular. And I don't think we are disregarding those comments at all. I think city staff is very good at listening to people's comments and working really hard to address that. We've seen that with controversial sidewalks, removal of trees to have bike paths, right? So city staff will keep working through this process. As Tom said, it's going to have to come back to us if we're talking about removing parking. This doesn't feel like a complete disregard of people's input. It feels like weighing the input that we've heard and we appreciate with the bigger policy goals that have been laid out for the city, and that's what we're here to do. So.
Thanks, Chris. Tom, if we were to move forward with the motion as it's stated, where we say that we request staff pursue the improvements on Owen and Seago as Safe Streets Madison projects, would that mean all of the improvements that are discussed here? So is it, aside from removing some parking on Midvale, would we get the improvements with the bike lanes on Midvale and then the improvements on Owen and Seago as well? Is that possibility we're discussing?
I think we would separate that out from this project. So we would probably come back with those specifically for those projects to show exactly what we would do. Cost estimates, evaluation through Safe Streets Madison, and handle it that way. So yeah, we would kind of just deal with those separately from this project at that point.
Okay, so let me reiterate. My point is that we can get improvements on Midvale and ask for you to bring back improvements on Owen and Seago as well. So it's not a total disregard of what residents, in my opinion, it's not a total disregard of what residents have said. It's, we're looking at safety improvements on all 3 streets. And just one last comment, and I'll go back to Alder Tischler. And that's a discussion that we have at the Transportation Commission often. And that's what Harold mentioned with regard, or maybe it was Chris or Harold both, with regard to the modal hierarchy. Parking is at the very bottom of the modal hierarchy, and pedestrian safety is at the very top. And, bicycle safety is higher than parking. And that's something that is very controversial for the residents whose parking is being impacted. It's something that we struggle with often and have lots of discussions about. But that's something that was approved and is our policy today in terms of priority. So, Alder Tischler, go ahead.
There we go. Yeah, and again, we're talking about, kind of things proposed in theory. We went through the area plans, the different ideas, for how we want to prioritize, where modes of transportation. What we're surveying people and asking is something that's very concrete in practice. And so we got results from people. I think, as you also, Alder Vitavere is not here, but she started her discussion mentioning how parking does make the street safer in some regards. I mean, again, I know I get a lot of responses from residents, who are very concerned and upset by the fact that people are using the buffered bike lanes to pass cars. That's one reason why I supported the protected bike lanes on North Otsego. So again, it's people are the perception right now, and it's been this way as long as I've been alive, that Midvale Boulevard is not a safe place to bike. We have other routes that people are currently using, right now. So we could be making the routes that people are using, making those safer. And then when we have the resources, when we have the money, we can come back and focus on Midvale Boulevard. Again, the third option, option 3 is the least expensive one. If we add on doing that Midvale Boulevard and then try and do Seago and Owen, we don't have the money right now in the city. So I just want to just make those points.
Thanks, Alder. Alder O'Brien, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Alder Tischler, for coming. And I would have thanked Regina if she was still here at this point. I guess I very much hear you on the, or I guess I very much hear Alder Tischler on the, incredible outpouring of public opinion, and I think that's absolutely something that needs to be taken into account. And I don't actually know that I have anything to add to this discussion, because I'll be honest, I've never I drive when I'm over on that side of town. I don't bike, or I take the bus when I'm over there, so I don't live over there, and I'm not going to be impacted by it. But I absolutely hear the what both Alder Tischler and Regina said about this is what they're hearing from their constituents, and I take that with a very large amount of understanding, because if this was in my district, I would be feeling exactly the same way. And yet at the same time, as has been mentioned, we do have these policies that are there for a reason, that they were implemented for a reason. And so I don't know. I don't know that I'm glad that we're having this discussion. And I've been, furiously taking like 5 pages of notes here. So I greatly appreciate it, and I'm greatly listening in. So I don't know if anybody has the magic solution. I'm not sure that I've fully heard it quite yet. But I'm curious to hear what others have to say, or keep saying, I guess. And I know I saw Harold's hand, so.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Martinez Rutherford, go ahead.
Thank you so much, and I apologize I'm not on camera. Y'all don't want to see it. I'm sitting with the struggle where we have 2 alders that are responsible for their constituents. And like Alder O'Brien said, I would, I would really want to make sure that we take into consideration, which I think we're doing, the constituents. And it's not only those constituents that use that road. The road is a public infrastructure. And so I guess I'm really split on this. My gut is telling me to go with option 3, and also I understand the need for a different option. So that it's not helpful, but I just wanted to articulate where I'm sitting.
Thanks, Alder. Tom, could you please clarify? We do have money left in Safe Streets Madison, correct?
Right. Yeah, we would just have to, and we plan on bringing Safe Streets projects yet this year for 2026. So, I guess depending how it ranks, and depending what you all as the Transportation Commission feel is a priority, it would just be within that program.
I just wanted to say that because we have the financing for Midvale isn't under Safe Streets Madison, correct? That's its own project. And if the motion that's on the table is requesting staff to pursue the improvements on Owen and Seago as a Safe Streets Madison project, Safe Streets Madison projects, that there is funding available in Safe Streets Madison to do that. I just wanted to clarify that.
We didn't put together specific estimates for these two projects at Mineral Point Road. But I would, and we would have to go back and see exactly what our funding is at, but
and we'll have funding next year, hopefully, for Safe Streets Madison as well.
Right, assuming right. So I would say there's a pretty good chance we would be able to find a way to do it within Safe Streets Madison.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that so that people know that's an option, because it's important for people to have all the information. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, since the topic came up, Tom, one question from your perspective. Does the parking, given the utilization rates, and I know there was some debate about that, from your perspective, does that increase safety, the current on-street parking?
So yeah, right. It's kind of like two different streets for the on-street parking. There's south of Regent and north of Regent. North of Regent, it's more utilized pretty much all the time, shown through the parking data. South of Regent, less so. We collected on a few different days at different times. So I would just go back. I wouldn't speculate beyond what we are presenting with the data. So we, let's see, I don't think I want to show that one. So here's 2023. So this is both morning and afternoon. What we see in the data is pretty consistent. There tends to be a few parked cars on the southbound side, kind of in the long stretch between north of Hillcrest. So on this day, we collected at 3 different times: 10 a.m., 3:30 p.m., 7:15 p.m. And then we did include 3 different times on a Saturday. So yeah, here's that block where there tends to be a few more parked cars. But this is what we have for the data. I just I would just look at, this is all I can provide.
Yeah, no, I guess my question was going more at like saying, if we keep parking, that makes the street safer, presumably by, I guess, visually narrowing it.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, as far as a traffic calming effect, if it's highly parked, it does have a calming effect for speeds, but when we're talking about a couple vehicles per block, I would say that effect is much lower. But up here where it's pretty much back-to-back parked vehicles, that does have an effect.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Tischler, go ahead.
On that point, point I was trying to make is that by just having a painted buffered line is not making it safer. That, again, people will use, and they are using it for on other streets for passing. So I mean, if we can do it right in the future, then let's do it right. But right now, this is not making it safer with just painted lines.
Thanks, Alder. Is that all you had, Alder Tischler?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to make sure. Other comments or discussion? Are we ready to vote? If so, I think we should probably do a roll call vote here based on what I've heard. any further discussion before we're ready to vote? Okay, I'm going to repeat what I have as the motion, and Harold and Robbie, make sure that I've got this right. Harold moved that we recommend moving forward with option number 1 and request staff pursue the improvements on Owen and Seago as Safe Streets Madison projects. And for the planned reconstruction in the future, we consider adding back on-street parking in that reconstruction. Okay, that's the motion on the table. There's no further discussion. Aidan, would you do a roll call, please?
Sure thing. So Sean O'Brien,
No.
Dina Nina Martinez Rutherford,
I think I might have to go no too.
I'm sorry, was that no, Alder?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Robbie Weber,
Yes.
Chris McCahill,
Yes.
Bill Bremer,
Yes.
Harold Kleems,
Yes.
Kaylee Jameson,
Yes.
Lynn Olson,
No.
that is 5 yes and 3 no.
We have 9 members here, and that requires 5 votes to pass the motion. So we do have 5 votes, and if people are interested, I would have voted yes as well myself, but I don't believe my vote is needed. Would that be correct, Aidan?
Yes, that's correct.
So with 9 members, including the chair, 5 votes are needed to pass the motion. So the motion is carried. So will we hear back from you, Tom, or how we'll need to have a public hearing with regard to the removal of the parking. So that issue is not resolved yet, correct?
Correct. Yep. We'll have to move forward with that.
Okay. And then you would need to come back on Owen and Seago for Safe Streets Madison, but the next step on Midvale would be what? Past that, I mean, next step is clearly the public hearing and Transportation Commission action relative to parking, which gives residents an opportunity to come and be heard on that particular issue, and alders as well. And then where do we go next after that?
I wonder if Chris wants to weigh in on this. I think we will we'll want to get this fully approved.
Yeah, so similar to like high point geometry earlier in the agenda, there was a geometry approval that was, officially introduced by the council, referred to the TC and board and then back to the council. So I think we might want to do that here. Just to, and maybe kind of to coincide with the public hearing. So that we'll have to talk about the exact logistics for that. And then following that, there would be the normal Board of Public Works process with the assessments and their public hearing and that sort of thing.
Sure. So, and maybe we can talk about timing because we don't have a second meeting in July, so our next TC meeting is not till October 8th. So that would be the soonest that we could have a public hearing on the parking. But if you feel we need to coordinate that with something else, or we want to work with alders to make sure that people have plenty of time to, and work with Stephanie, of course, with regard to that, because she has to do certain things. I believe there's publications and things like that that have to happen. So, yeah, maybe you and Tom can work on and Stephanie, whoever can work on coordinating all of that.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, everybody. A lot of good discussion, and everybody's voices were heard. I know decisions don't always turn out the way that people wish that they would. But I just want to make sure that people do know that we did our best to listen to everybody and take everything into consideration. So thanks, and Tom, thanks, and Chris and everybody, thanks for lots of work on Midvale, which has been going on for a couple years now. So and clearly got a lot of great involvement and community engagement as well. So thanks to everybody for all of that. Okay, we move on to item 4, which is MacArthur Road, MacArthur Court, Larson Court, and Sycamore Avenue. Do we have anybody registered to speak on this, Aiden?
We do have one person. I don't know if I see them in the registrants list though at this time.
Okay, well, we'll hear from staff with a presentation, and then if there is somebody from the public, we'll hear from them, and then we'll go to comments and discussion.
To talk to you and get your feedback and approval for our geometry for our upcoming MacArthur Road, MacArthur Court, Larson Court, Sycamore Avenue reconstruction. Our engineer, Nasha Lee, who's working on this project, is over this week, so I will be filling in with her for her to give you a PowerPoint presentation and then answer your questions, kind of let you know what we found with the public.
Andy, I don't know if I'm the only one, but your audio is very blurry. I don't know if you have a microphone or a headset or anything like that, but it's really hard to understand what you're saying. Maybe I'm the only one having that problem.
I concur.
Yeah, I'm having an issue too. So.
All right, I've done this before, so we can change anything.
Are you too close to the mic, maybe, Andy?
You can step back a little bit. Is this any better?
No. Do you have a Do you have a headset?
I don't have a headset.
Okay, like earbuds or anything like that.
Try. All right. Can someone talk?
Oh, can you hear us okay, Andy?
Can I just have to switch it to my headphones? See if that doesn't.
That's much better, Andy. That's much better.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay, typically I don't have this issue, but I'm glad that it's been resolved quickly. Okay, to start over.
Yes, please.
City of Pennsylvania. I am seeking your recommendations and approval for the upcoming MacArthur Road, MacArthur Court, Larson Court, Sycamore Avenue reconstruction project. Our engineer, Nasha Lee, is out this week, so I'll be presenting a PowerPoint presentation. Just talks about our public engagement, our survey, what we found out, what kind of the public is looking for. There's been quite a bit of chatter since the last public meeting. I know I had residents email the Transportation Commission on some of their thoughts on the project. We can talk about that as I go through the presentation. So starting with the project location. So MacArthur Road is East Washington Avenue, kind of headed northeast on Stoughton Road. So it's this whole project is, we'll call it rural urban. no curb and sidewalk, and we're gonna put in curb and sidewalk. Now, the whole network of this reconstruction area has a combination of sidewalk, no curb, curb and sidewalk, and then no sidewalk, no curb. So, our, focus of what we heard from the public was a lot about the areas with no curb and sidewalk. Inform the commission about the upcoming projects and the street layout options that we presented to the public. Inform the commission about the public meeting and the questionnaire, and to gain feedback and approval about some of the options we laid out. So where we are in the process, we had a public meeting in October of 24, so a year ago, prior to really starting the project. The alder requested that we meet with the neighborhood, kind of talk about what's coming, how these projects go, since it's pretty significant when you don't have curb or sidewalk and you're going to curb and sidewalk. Following that, we had residents ask us to go through a walkthrough around the project, talk about the neighborhood, things that resident has, heard from the neighbors around in the neighborhood. That was November 19th of 2024. So we didn't do anything over the winter, in the winter, because we're waiting on survey for the project. So we started the project in roughly June. We established kind of some geometry, some options. We checked in with the alder, got our presentation in order, and had a public meeting on August 27th, 2025, just a couple weeks ago. So right now, the Transportation Commission, next steps would be board approval of plan specs and assessments, and then the council after that. So we did a speed study. This was traffic engineering, found that on MacArthur Road, and this is Sycamore here, that there was no significant issues with speeding, that over 30 miles per hour, there wasn't a lot of vehicles going over 30 miles per hour. What we've heard from them, is that they're speeding, and that this is a cut through from folks from East Washington going to MacArthur to get to Sycamore. When I was out there, I would agree that there were cars that were, not necessarily driving to their homes, but they were cutting through MacArthur and Sycamore. Parking study. So right now, there's no parking on MacArthur Road in this section existing. There is parking on Sycamore, but that's restricted to days only. The neighborhood went through a process years ago with a petition to try to get rid of evening parking, and that went through, so that is currently in place. So the parking study didn't show too much parking at all, at least in this one. And then we did weekend parking, showed a little bit of weekend parking in Sycamore, which is where parking is authorized. These clips here, I think it's not necessarily no parking, it's just not signed. They're pretty narrow, and these are really, they're dead ends, and which it's just really residents on the court. So weekend counts were during the mid-evening. So here's what our proposal is. So MacArthur Road. Also try to put the map up so you can follow, because MacArthur Road is a couple different sections. Okay, so MacArthur Road from, let's see, Sycamore, from Sycamore to 22 feet from East Washington all the way to Sycamore. In our public engagement in last October and November, in the annual meeting, residents really did not want parking on MacArthur Road in these blocks. They wanted to keep the road narrow. And then with that, the representative that we talked to also clearly stated that they didn't want parking. So it was pretty collaborative, the team going into the design this summer that MacArthur Road in this section, from Sycamore to East Wash, needed to be 22 feet, no parking, keep it narrow. So then we got a lot from the neighborhood on Sycamore on why they wanted to limit parking in this section is because a lot of these apartment complexes have multiple vehicles and they park all over the neighborhood. So they want the other residents wanted to limit parking on Sycamore. So going back to our proposed design, we would propose MacArthur in this section to be 24 feet to allow parking on one side, to try to potentially pull the vehicles off of here and put them more closer to their apartments. You know, it's not a really long stretch. There's a couple of driveways in there, so there would be a few spaces accommodated as well. And currently, the apartment complex parks, their parking lot extends into the right of way, almost to the road. So we'll be removing that and creating this turnaround bulb because we have the right of way space. So the overall project on all the streets is to remove the asphalt, gravel, driveway aprons, curb and gutter, sidewalk. MacArthur Road has sidewalk on the west side, no sidewalk on the east side. When you get down to MacArthur Court, between MacArthur Court and Sycamore, no curb, no sidewalk. And then talked about installing a cul-de-sac with a 30-foot radius at the bottom. So MacArthur Court is currently just rural, no sidewalks, no curb. So the proposal is 20 feet face to curb, and put sidewalk on both sides. So recently, if TC members have reviewed some of the comments, it's been requested that we put sidewalk on one side on the cul-de-sac. And why engineering feels that sidewalk is warranted on both sides is because horizontally it fits. Right of way is wide enough. There's an existing connection here to Duncan. So when we were out there, we did see residents using this connection. So we figured that you definitely need sidewalk on one side, and with keeping MacArthur Court as 20 feet, that it fits on the other side horizontally. So Larson Court, Larson Court saying so tighter right away on Larson Court and some trees on Larson Court that are preventing it from having sidewalk on both sides. So why we feel that sidewalk is warranted on one side is because in the future, WISDOT is planning to reconstruct the East Washington and Stoughton Road intersection, and putting a path along Stoughton Road here along the east side. So connecting that path with Larson Court, was something we kept in, and which is why we have sidewalk adjacent to the curb here. Again, Larson Court's 20 feet. Rather was really tight on the south side with some really mature trees, both in the right of way and private. So they would not, without the trees, it would not fit, at least on this side of the project. It does fit on the north side. So moving along, so to be clear that the engineer did not present any options on what I just talked about to the public for street width or sidewalk discussion. No, we did not propose MacArthur as either 22 or 26. We clearly heard it from the public last fall that is what they were looking for regarding street width. Sycamore Road Avenue, you do have options. And also Sycamore Court Avenue is it's really two separate streets. You have an existing code and step back. Sycamore has sidewalk on both sides of it. So it's clearly two streets meeting, and it has an existing section. Half the street is code, and it is 31 feet wide with parking on both sides. Code's in good condition. Engineering is not proposing any changes to the street width there. We're just planning on tearing up the pavement and putting it back, and then fixing driveways and sidewalks as needed. We're also planning to continue the sidewalk on the south side to Mendota, Sycamore and Mendota, create a safe crossing to the park that's over here along Mendota and Sycamore. Okay, so the unfinished section of Sycamore, we put out to the neighborhood. First option we put out was 22 feet with no parking in this unfinished section. Coming out of the wide terraces, that was one option. Second option was 26 feet, parking on one side. Terraces are still good terraces for trees, potential rain gardens. As requested that the no overnight parking restriction maintained, so we're also on that request has been made multiple times. So from this perspective, this is our recommendation, is that Sycamore will put in at 26 feet, parking on one side. We have, I'll keep going, talk about the results. Last option, 30 feet, parking on both sides with that overnight parking restriction where they cannot park overnight being maintained. The results. So the results were here we are. So for A, we had the number of votes, and we had 60% support. Again, hearing a lot from the neighborhood about slowing traffic down, and that wanting a lot of those folks that live in the apartment complex to not park in the neighborhood. Option B, 26 feet, it has just as much support as do not support. It has much to live with. Option C, not really supported. So moving on, more how we kind of present the status. So I wanted to bring it down a little bit more to see how many folks that actually live on Sycamore replied with a questionnaire and what was their thought. So option A, 6 people replied, and 3 support, 2 can live with, 3 support. Option B, 3 support, 2 can live with, 3 not support. So this data is actually very similar for all the options for the folks that live on Sycamore. I can zoom in too. I know it's small on your end. Moving to okay, so we took the data and we widened it out to people that live in the project limits, and found that okay, a lot of people supported A, and I think a lot of those folks we've been hearing live on MacArthur. They don't live on Sycamore, but they live on MacArthur. A lot of these responses were all residents in the house responded as well. So, 2 people in the house will both respond. So for option, back. A was 19 support, for option B was 7 support, and for option C, 6 support.
We're losing you again, Andy. I don't know why it seems like it's getting a little bit worse again.
Okay. My voice is also getting worse. What's
That's
this?
better. That's
Okay.
better. Thanks.
All right, so then another table, and this is just project wide, so we can add a few more responses, kind of let you know all the people that took the questionnaire. So again, we're just gaining more support for option A. And hold on. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. So why recommended option B? Because I was really looking at the residents that live on Sycamore. This has come up before in other projects where how do the residents on the street feel about it? And what I've heard from residents on Sycamore is they're okay with option, but it's really important if they have parking, they have that overnight restriction. And it's clear that they're out there. If you look at Google right now, overall parking in this section of Sycamore. It's in the parking, and why doesn't it traffic calming effect? Because there's no curb, so they just park in the terrace. So the terrace is all dug up, it's puddled. So talking with traffic engineering, the parking study did show some parking on weekends. It's clear that the people are parking out there, and there wasn't anything overwhelming based on the residents that live on Sycamore. That was why engineering recommended option B. All right. So I can talk about some of the comments we've received. So there is, let's see. Also, I want to talk about the sidewalk a little bit more. My exhibit here. So sidewalk fits horizontally, and we have it proposed. Trees. So with the sidewalk layout right now, we have 3 tree removals. That's down here at the cul-de-sac. Forestry has told us that anywhere we put the sidewalk in this corner, we came up with a few different options. The trees would have to be removed. So those are our 3 tree removals right now, based on this sidewalk location. Going back up to Sycamore, and we're showing our sidewalk kind of go in and out like this. And what I want to tell the commission was that I'm confident that the sidewalk can go in. What I'm less confident about is exactly where in the terrace. Is it a 5-foot terrace? Is it an 8-foot terrace? And we'll know more of that when we go through the vertical design. We haven't got into that yet because we like to get all the committee approvals before we dive into that. But we're going to be able to make this look a little better. We have total, we have the 3 tree removals because of sidewalk. We have 12 right-of-way trees that were avoided by moving the sidewalk in and out. And we have 10 private trees that we're avoiding by moving the sidewalk in and out. Forestry, so what happened is we drew all the sidewalks at the right, and at the forestry, they marked up, okay, you need to, this tree sensitive, and so we the sidewalk around, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So once we kind of get feedback in your approval, we'll go back and move forth with forestry a little bit. There is an extra sensitive area on the street with trees. This is between MacArthur Court and Sycamore, where we have some really trees here, where the sidewalks can be really tight against the curb, the streets can be, we have 22 feet. We're going to go to 20 feet in some areas where forestry told us that they need a little extra space. That would be here. That would be down here on Larson Court. Again, the horizontal location where it is from the side curb, I think we still have work to do on that, and that's pretty typical. I'm confident that we're going to be able to put sidewalk on both sides. Like I said, it's been requested that sidewalk be taken out on one side of MacArthur Court. I think on MacArthur, the sidewalk's gonna get closer to the curb a little bit. We have some fences and some private property, fences on the right of way and some other private property that we want to try to avoid. So there's still some work to do on that. But from an engineering standpoint, it fits. Let's see. Let's talk about. So recapping, I'm looking for feedback and approval of TC's recommendation and what they would like for Sycamore options, A, B, or C. And just general overall feedback, if there is any. We did hear, so in the, a resident asked for engineering to share the responses to the questionnaire. I did include that, broke that down, because there's a lot of residents that are upset about sidewalks. Overall, out of the 39 responses, in specifically the questionnaire. Now, we put the question there, do we want sidewalk or not? That's not something that we typically do. That's not something this committee would want either. So there was 7 responses of folks that did not want sidewalk in the questionnaire. Let's move that, and I'll stop talking and ask your questions and feedback.
Carl, before we go to your question or comments, do we have anybody registered to speak on this, Aiden?
We do. One second.
Robbie and Harold, can we wait till after we hear from the public and then go to comments and questions?
Absolutely, no problem.
Okay.
Sorry. So the registrant is Joseph Cronforst of Sycamore Avenue, registered in support and wishes to speak, but I don't believe they're here at this time.
Oh, I don't see him. Yeah, I don't see him in the queue. But they registered in support?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Robbie, I think Harold was first and then you're second.
Yep.
Go ahead, Harold.
Okay. Yeah, I lowered my hand. Thanks, Andy. And yeah, I did have a hard time hearing everything. So if I misunderstood anything, please correct me. So I will also lay out, like, telling you what I understood you said. One question I have, when you showed the survey results, it looked like nobody from the multi-family housing at the end of MacArthur Road actually responded. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct according to the survey. Yes, I cannot. We didn't specifically go to those websites of those places and inform them of the question of the public meeting and the questionnaire. I think because we'll have to try to get a hold of them because it's very impactful to their property. But to answer your question, no.
Yeah, I think I would encourage you, like, yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of extra effort if I guess these are townhomes, but yeah, making sure, I mean, both from the management companies, if there is one, and also trying to get some input from tenants would be good. So that's not just the single family home owners chiming in. Can you tell me why staff, I didn't quite follow why staff recommended option 2 over option 1, and I think the difference is 4 feet of additional width and 1 side of parking, but not overnight parking, right? That's the difference between option 1 and 2?
Just no parking. Yeah, so I think I was looking at the results on Sycamore, specifically. Oops.
Yeah.
That is, there was an response that residents wanted either option. And from the few folks that emailed me, they were okay with parking on one side as long as we had the overhead restriction continued. And then based on our field review and talking with TE, clearly there are people parking in the terrace there. The terrace is, there's no grass, it's muddy, it's been torn up, and cars parking in the terrace because there's no curb. So if we're going to curb in, we're actually, the actual street width will be the same with the 26. But now we've got a car parked in the street, creating additional traffic calming. So we're getting the same width as we do now. We're getting a better terrace and some traffic calming effects.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. And then I think on one of the slides, at the end of MacArthur Court, that pedestrian connection, I think it said something about improvements to that.
You said, I said MacArthur Court. Yeah, so what was your question?
Are you going to make changes to that?
Oh,
like, is
yes.
that going to be wider or anything?
So right now it's really steep. So we're going to, the actual road goes here. We're going to pull the road in and lengthen that to get it to be 5% or less. Right now it's way over 5%. I think there was, we haven't talked about the width lately. I think there's some, there's definitely space and flexibility, I think, for some widening, and that's something we can certainly look into. The ultimate goal is to get it to be flatter and pull in this curve. And I didn't talk about this work on Duncan. So we also heard that there's a significant amount of stormwater that runs down this path and creates ice problems in the winter. So the thought is to pull storm sewer up. Duncan is in good shape. Curve and pavement in good shape. So from a surface treatment standpoint, we wish we didn't have to get into Duncan, but it makes the best sense to pull storm sewer up from Mendota and put it inlet here to collect water and get that out of that area where the path transitions to the street. So that's why Duncan is slated for just a storm sewer and then a resurface work because it's in good condition. But yeah, improvements to the path, this connection is absolutely something we will do.
Okay. Yeah, I think just when you can make those 8 feet wide, I know a lot of people use them on mobility devices on biking because they are super convenient where you can just cut through the neighborhood on a very quiet spot. But when they're like 5-foot sidewalks and you have vegetation that's not really managed from both sides, then yeah, they can be kind of narrow or if there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. So that's good. Yep, that's all I had. I don't think I know you were looking for opinions on option 1, 2, or 3. I honestly don't have strong opinions. More people from the public, even though it's a subset of the public, supported option 1. It's less permeable surface slightly. So yeah, no strong opinions on that. So I'll leave it to other commissioners. Thanks.
Thanks, Harold. Robbie, go ahead.
So I think some of the things that Harold asked were what I was going to ask as well, because I also had a lot of trouble following some of the details because of the audio problems. But if I understand correctly, you're putting sidewalks on both sides of all the streets that are going to be worked on, except for Larson Court, which would have sidewalks on one side. That's the staff recommendation. Is that correct?
Correct. This section of MacArthur, this long section here on the west side, already has sidewalk. But yes, to answer your question, yes. Yep.
Okay. So all the streets except for Larson would have sidewalk on both sides.
Correct.
Okay. And then I just want to clarify again that the reason you're recommending, staff is recommending option 2 on Sycamore is that there are people currently parked there, so you feel like there is a need for parking, but people who responded kind of felt like they could take it or leave it with parking. Is that what we're hearing?
So I would say for the residents on Sycamore, it was unclear. It didn't go, we all support the parking, we all don't want the parking. I think they were fine to keep it parking on one side, but it's important to them, it was the parking restriction. I think a lot of the survey was from folks on MacArthur Court, or MacArthur Road, that were living in on Sycamore, and yeah, it's very close to the neighborhood as well too. I was focused more on. So I saw the overwhelming support. I understand. On these surveys, I sometimes narrow it down. My thought process to see, okay, what do the people want on the street? As it might not always reflect the overall responses.
Okay, so that's why you're recommending, I mean, I understand the overnight parking restriction. I got that part. And that's not a physical infrastructure issue. It's a, signage and enforcement issue.
Yep.
But you felt that or engineering felt that the parking was needed, which is why you're recommending a slightly wider road so that parking would be allowed on one side. And the residents didn't feel strongly either way, except that they want the overnight parking restriction maintained. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear so that I knew who was saying what and why the recommendations were coming in. So.
One other note is MacArthur Road, 22 feet. We didn't hear much at all about people wanting parking on MacArthur Road. We heard it, did not hear it last fall. There was someone that reached out about wanting parking on MacArthur Road. So I think I am not proposing to change anything. I was just going to tell the commission that I was going to be open to maybe creating a parking pocket somewhere if needed, but I would have to thoroughly vet that with traffic engineering. But I'm not looking to change from 22 feet. Clearly, the residents want folks to slow down and keeping a narrow street is better. We also want to keep the street narrow so we have more flexibility to move the sidewalk in and out of the trees. So I would have put the trees down for a parking pocket, but I just want to let the commission know that I was open to that as we go through with the design.
Okay. I think I got it. And I don't know what the audio problem is at your end, but if you're having it repeatedly, you may want to check into that because it's really hard to get all the details.
Really hard.
All right. Thanks. Maybe it's equipment. Maybe the city can help you with some equipment. Thanks.
Yeah. It's something you should look into, Andy, for sure. Harold, go ahead.
Thank you. Andy, I'm looking at the southern end of MacArthur Court where the multifamily housing is. And I looked at street view of what it looks like right now. So it's like a pretty narrow street that turns into a private road, and then to the left you have the driveway into those other buildings. And so we're adding a turning circle, and then I see that dotted line on there. So is that like a realigned driveway for the multifamily housing there?
That's right here.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I think probably I'm going into that. I see that is, I think there's some sanitary sewer line work coming. I know I didn't mention this piece of MacArthur. Our sewer utility is planning on running a storm sewer pipe all the way down to this pond. So we're actually going to repave the driveway for this apartment complex. That's what that is. This dashed line is not related to any geometry. It's related to a sanitary sewer. And the existing survey is also on too. So see what you're seeing here is some existing survey.
Okay. Yeah. So the curb ramp that I'm seeing there, that would be actual geometry, like on the top right.
Here, are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah, the one to the right or north. East,
So
I guess.
this is a driveway, this is a driveway, and this is a driveway
Okay.
here. So if you go down to the street view, you see right now, you can't tell where the right of way is, where the MacArthur Road starts and the MacArthur driveway where this apartment starts. So our plan is to fix all that. Make these driveways standard driveways that you enter from the street and not just have it be a free flow of cars down to this apartment complex.
Okay. I guess my only piece of feedback is this might be, I mean, since this, kudos to making no tree removals with the whole thing and curving around trees. That's quite the achievement on such a large project. But since this is the only area where it is those 3 trees and it seems to be pretty close and you add that turning circle, I mean, maybe there's something where you can shift stuff in a way that, I mean, probably not because that driveway edge is so close, but that might be just one thing to look at.
Street.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harold. Other comments or questions? So Andy's looking for a motion on the preferred option design. And that's really just for Sycamore, right, Andy? Because there aren't options offered for any of the other.
Correct.
Unless commissioners have thoughts about something else that was offered here where they want to see some changes other than on Sycamore.
Correct, based on any feedback that the commission received, you know, if you want any of the other geometry changed as well.
Okay, comments or questions? Anybody have any thoughts about a motion? Robbie?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move that we go with the staff recommendation of option 2 on Sycamore, which would be the 26 feet with parking on one side and sidewalks on both sides of the streets except for Larson Court, which would have sidewalks on one side.
Yeah, I'm still writing here. Okay, what I have is move that we go with the staff recommendation of option 2 on Sycamore, which would be 26-foot street width, parking on one side, sidewalks on both sides, except Larson Court, which has sidewalks on one side. Is that right, Robbie?
Yes. And I believe that was the staff recommendation. And if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me.
Chris?
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Andy, is that reflective of the staff recommendation?
Yeah, option 3 is the staff recommendation, 26 feet.
Okay, I'm just gonna repeat it. Robbie made a motion, seconded by Chris, that we go with the staff recommendation of option 2 on Sycamore, which would be 26-foot street width, parking on one side, sidewalks on both sides except Larson Court, which has sidewalks on one side.
Can I clarify something? And that
Okay.
is that the sidewalks on both sides are for all the streets except for Larson Court, because there was public feedback about MacArthur Court. And I wanted to clarify that staff had recommended sidewalks on both sides there.
Okay, how about if I say sidewalks on both sides on all the streets in the project except Larson Court, which has sidewalks on one side?
Correct. Thank you.
Hard for me to write as fast as you guys talk, you know? Okay, so I have moved that we go with the staff recommendation of option 2. Can't read my own writing there. Option 2 on Sycamore, which would be 26-foot street width with parking on one side. Sidewalks on both sides and all the streets in the project, except Larson Court, which has sidewalks on one side. Harold?
I don't think this needs to go into the motion, but I just want to, this is fine with me. I just want to re-encourage Andy before this goes to Board of Public Work to do that additional reach out to the people in the multifamily housing so that they have an opportunity, if they have any concerns, to bring those to the Board of Public Works, which is going to make the ultimate approval of this. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks, Harold. Okay, discussion on the motion. I'm sorry, Robbie, did you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna repeat it. There's a motion that we go with the staff recommendation of option 2 on Sycamore, which would be 26-foot street width with parking on one side. Sidewalks on both sides on all streets in the project, except Larson Court, which has sidewalks on one side. Any discussion? Okay, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Or if you want a roll call vote, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried unanimously. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, and I apologize for the other issues.
I'm sorry, what was that, Andy?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to item 5, which is crossover reports from any of the other VCCs. Anybody have anything to report tonight? No? Harold?
Very briefly, Board of Public Works last week, if I remember correctly, we had a change order related to a number of Safe Streets Madison works where there was some contract shuffling around and some additions and some cost overruns. But I think the bottom line is that they are all moving forward. A change order was approved. And so, yeah, Safe Streets Madison projects moving along in addition to some metro stop improvements, all as part of one contract. That's all I have from Board of Public Works.
Thanks, Harold. Anything else? Okay. I don't have any announcements tonight. In terms of future agenda items, looks like we'll have a public hearing potentially on October 8th, the public hearing to remove residential permit parking. And I'll have to get the details from Tom and Stephanie to make sure that that's properly noted on the agenda. So our plan would be to have, if we do have that at the October 8th meeting, assuming everything can be publicized, etc., would be to have Stephanie present her report regarding the recommendation to TC, followed by public testimony. Would be to have discussion, deliberation, and a vote potentially at that same meeting. If the item was adjourned to the next Transportation Commission for discussion, deliberation, and vote, we would plan to not have any additional public testimony on the item at that time. So our thoughts would be just to have it at one meeting, so everybody can be heard all at the same meeting. So we'll obviously work on that with a lot of different people. Potentially update on passenger rail from Liz Callan, annual crash facts report and follow-up from, I think it's 3 years. Is that right, Tom? Because there's been this new software that they're putting in place. So that's why we haven't had it for a while. It's 2 or 3 years that we'll see.
Yeah.
3 years, is that right, Tom?
Yep.
Okay. So that may potentially come. Mick Roosh had sent out a link to the Metro Transit Onboard Survey Report. We wanted to give commission members an opportunity to ask questions here at the commission about that survey. So Ben Lyman and Mick Roosh will be coming to talk about that. And Lynn had asked to talk about fare collection procedures, which relates to drivers and issues that they've had. So we may potentially have that on October 8th as well as an opportunity to talk about the 2026 capital and operating budgets. And I know Harold, you wanted to particularly talk about the operating budget. So that's potentially scheduled for October 8th as well. Does anybody have any other I want to look more closely at those two items that we got on in item 1 tonight. Harold, go ahead.
I know the next round of transportation alternative project applications, I think, is due end of October, if I'm not mistaken. Are we gonna have something related to that on the agenda in the next couple meetings?
Oh, shoot, I think we lost Chris Pedakowski.
Yeah, that
think
would
he
be a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you
Did
can
you-
just check in with him.
You said the applications are due when?
I think at the end of the October.
I can ask Chris about that. Tom, you don't happen to know the answer, do you?
I don't. Yeah, I'd have to check with Chris.
Okay. We'll have to check with Chris. Anything else? Tom Moore, I think you saw that email from Sabrina with regard to crossing by a school, by Toki Middle School. Did that find its way to you?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Just wanted to make sure you saw that. Because if it needs to come under Safe Streets Madison or whatever, that looks like something that we should be thinking about as well. Anybody have any other agenda items for us to track? Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Long meeting, but a lot of good discussion and a lot of interesting thoughts about different priorities, which we oftentimes hear at Transportation Commission. We need a motion to adjourn. Harold?
So move.
Is there a second? Alder Martinez Rutherford. So we have a motion and a second. I'm assuming everybody's in favor of adjourning. And thanks so much, everybody. And we'll see you next time. So we have a bit of time off because we don't have a second meeting in September. So we'll see you in October. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye now.